Hey guys, tonight we're doing something bold. You're about to become a soldier in the American Civil War. Union side, since that's where the draft tosses you. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. Between dysentery, bullets, brutal winters, and commanders with moustaches that outrank your sense of reason, your odds aren't great, but it'll be a ride. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your city and the time you're watching. It's fun to see how many of us are drifting off from different corners of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't sign up for the Civil War, it signs you up. You're 19, living somewhere north of the Mason-Dixon line, maybe Pennsylvania or Ohio, working on a farm or apprenticing in a city print shop. One spring morning, while you're pretending to be useful stacking hay or setting type, a stern man in a coat too fancy for this town hands your father a sheet of paper. It's the draft. You're in. Your family doesn't say much. There's a lot of long stares over half-eaten biscuits, maybe a pat on the back from your father that feels more like a shove. Your mother gives you socks. They're poorly knit, itchy and tight, but you'll wear them until they rot. You're told to report to a recruitment centre. That phrase makes it sound like there's a building, maybe some kind of office with pens. Instead, it's a tent next to a church where a sergeant is arguing with someone about mule theft. You check in and he looks you over. No formalities, just a quick nod, a scribble in a ledger, and a muttered, "You'll do." That's how your war begins. You expect to be handed a weapon. Instead, you're handed nothing. You're told to walk, yes, walk, 90 miles to a training camp where, allegedly, your real soldiering will begin. Along the way, you're lumped in with other recruits. Most are just boys like you. Some can't grow beards yet. Others are already missing teeth for no reason related to war. There's one man with a wooden leg who insists he was approved for service, and you're not sure whether to be inspired or deeply concerned. The march to camp is its own ordeal. You sleep in barns and eat whatever's cheap, usually stale cornbread or dried apples. There's a lot of coughing. A lot. Someone mentions typhoid, and everyone laughs nervously. You arrive at camp sore, blistered and filthy. Welcome to basic training, Civil War style. The term training is generous. There's one man in charge of 300 of you. His name is Captain Willis, but everyone calls him Old Rope because he once tied a Confederate to a wagon wheel for stealing whiskey. Whether or not that story's true doesn't really matter. Everyone believes it. Your first order of business: uniforms. The quartermaster is overwhelmed and underpaid. He tosses you a blue wool jacket 2 sizes too big and matching trousers that ride up like angry socks. The boots are stiff, and you're not convinced they're both for the same foot. There's also a canteen, dented and already leaking, and a cap that smells like it was used to catch raccoons. You're then issued your weapon, a Springfield Model 1861 rifle musket. It's almost as tall as you are and heavier than you'd like. The bayonet clips on with a satisfying click, which is good because you'll spend the next 6 hours practicing how to stab hay bales. Some guys name their rifles. You consider naming yours Please Don't Jam. Night falls fast and it's shockingly cold. You try sleeping on the hard ground under a tent you share with 6 others. One snores like a dying train, another cries in his sleep. You roll over, hug your leaky canteen, and try not to breathe too deeply. It smells like desperation and unwashed wool. But hey, here's your first historical nugget. By 1863, over 2 million men would serve in the Union Army. Most were volunteers early on, but when the draft kicked in, things got messy. You're part of that mess. The Enrollment Act of 1863 was the first federal conscription law in US history, and deeply unpopular. Rich folks could pay $300 to avoid service. You? Not so much. Now for something more quirky. There's a guy in your unit who insists he can charm bullets away by whispering to them. He calls himself Whistlejack. He's from Vermont and carries a harmonica but never plays it. Instead, he hums to his rifle like it's a baby bird. People laugh, but when the time comes, nobody wants to stand next to him in line, just in case the bullets don't buy it. There's also debate, still ongoing, about how effective the early months of training really were. Some historians argue that Union soldiers, especially early in the war, went into battle criminally unprepared. Others say that the raw, fast-paced nature of the training built tougher soldiers. You're undecided. But after your first week of failed drills, infected blisters, and soup made from salted pork fat and questionable onions, you're pretty sure you'd trade it all for a train ticket back home. The nights stretch on, quiet and full of the occasional gunshot echoing in the distance, someone being careless or drunk, or both. And though you're supposed to rest, sleep doesn't come easy. You lie awake, staring at the canvas above, counting the days until something, anything, happens. And eventually it will. But for now, you dream of dry socks, warm biscuits, and not dying before you even see a battlefield. Morning smacks you in the face with a bugle blast. It's not melodic. It's not even competent, but it's loud, and it's happening directly outside your tent. You jolt upright, or try to, because your back has fused with the coal dirt and your legs are tangled in someone else's blanket. The guy next to you smells like pickled cabbage and regret. You stumble into the thin grey dawn wrapped in a wool jacket that's already damp from your own sweat, and maybe a little from last night's fog. Your breath clouds in front of you as you stand in line with 50 other half-conscious soldiers who look like they've been raised from the dead and given exactly 1 hour of orientation. Today's agenda: uniform fittings and the full-body betrayal that is 19th century military hygiene. You're marched, shuffled, really, to the quartermaster's shed again, which looks like someone tried to build a barn but got distracted halfway through and decided to open a raccoon refuge instead. Inside, it smells like wet leather, kerosene, and misery. A man with a face like a collapsed boot hands you a second pair of socks, a shirt with what may or may not be bloodstains on it, and a jacket he swears is your size even though you can't raise your arms above your shoulders once it's on. You're also issued a blanket, an itchy death trap made from recycled wool and broken dreams. Then you're sent to the camp's sanitation station. That phrase makes you picture a faucet, maybe even a towel. Incorrect. What you get is a barrel filled with lukewarm water that 6 men have already used, a hunk of communal lye soap that could sand a table, and the world's most public bath setting. Welcome to the concept of hygiene Civil War style. It's optional, ineffective, and frequently abandoned by week 2. Here's your reality check. More soldiers die in this war from disease than bullets. Dysentery, typhoid, malaria. These are your real enemies. The latrines are just pits dug into the earth, way too close to the cooking fires, and there's no toilet paper. You use leaves, or hope the wind helps. Hand washing is rare. Germ theory exists, but it's fringe science. Most surgeons still think pus means healing. You meet the camp doctor once. He looks like someone's disgraced uncle who wandered into medicine by accident. His medical kit includes saws, tweezers, chloroform, when available, and 2 bottles of whiskey. One for the patient, one for him. There's a sign hanging on the post near the infirmary that reads, "Don't come in unless you're sure you're dying." It's only half a joke. But hey, here's your quirky moment for the day. You meet a guy named Ellis who insists on boiling his socks every morning to kill the stink ghosts. Nobody argues with him, partly because he's huge, and partly because it turns out he's one of the few in camp who doesn't get foot rot. Ellis becomes both a legend and a warning. People start referring to his boiling pan as the cauldron of health. Later that day, you're marched out for a session on military posture. The officer running it has a thick German accent and the patience of a snapping turtle. He screams about your spine, your neck, your inability to stand up straight. "You're not a sack of potatoes," he bellows at a boy who promptly falls over. Then come the boots. You were issued them yesterday, sure, but now you actually try walking in them. Big mistake. They're stiff enough to pass as weapons. By the end of a single mile, your heels are raw, your toes are forming tight little unions of rebellion, and your ankles have started to blister like they're hosting a rebellion of their own. And here's a historical tidbit to ponder while you're limping through another mile. The Union Army supply lines were notoriously chaotic early in the war. Some soldiers got mismatched boots, others went weeks without proper uniforms, and sometimes the quartermaster would misplace entire crates of clothing and sell them to nearby towns. War profiteering wasn't just a Confederacy thing. After your hobble run across camp, you're allowed to sit. The officer calls it rest, but then immediately begins a lecture on diseases and why you should avoid drinking directly from streams. His voice is dry and slow, like someone reading a tax manual from inside a barrel. The moment you sit down, though, you realize another universal truth of soldier life. No surface is ever truly dry. You stand up with a wet patch on your backside and no shame left to speak of. At dinner, you're handed a tin plate and told to enjoy the feast. The feast is a lump of salt pork, 2 boiled beans pretending to be stew, and hardtack, an edible brick made of flour and water that could double as battlefield armor in a pinch. Some guys suck on it like jawbreakers, others smash it with rifle butts first. You try both methods, neither works. One brave soul breaks a tooth and cries in silence. There's a debate raging at your end of the mess line. Some say it's better to eat only half the rations now and save the rest for later. Others say you should eat everything immediately because someone will steal from your bag while you sleep. You go with option C, eat everything now and guard your bag with the cold dead stare of a man who has nothing left to lose. By nightfall, you feel like you've aged 5 years. The sky turns dark blue and then inky black. The stars weirdly bright above a landscape full of grumbling men and crackling fires. You try writing a letter home but give up after 2 lines. Dear Ma, I miss your pie. Everything here is itchy. And it is. Every surface, every garment, every inch of your body. You're itchy and sore and convinced that if you scratch one more mosquito bite, you'll somehow unlock a new form of personal suffering. The guy in the next tent swears he saw a rat the size of a loaf of bread and names it General Scamper. Sleep is fitful again. Someone is coughing like they're dying. Someone else is praying out loud. The night wraps around you like the wool blanket. Itchy, heavy, but all you've got. You close your eyes, wondering how many more days like this you can take before the actual fighting starts. And whether, somehow, that might be better. The next morning you're introduced to the fine art of not dying from boredom, otherwise known as camp life. The officers call it daily routine, but it mostly consists of pretending you're busy until someone with more buttons yells at you. You wake up stiff, still itchy, and somehow colder than yesterday, even though you slept in the same tent, same blanket, same guy snoring like a busted pipe next to you. The bugle sounds, because of course it does, and you drag yourself into the grey dawn for roll call. Captain Willis, still chewing the same stub of cigar from 3 days ago, reads the names with mechanical disinterest. He doesn't look up once. When he says your name, you grunt something that sounds vaguely human. That counts. Then it's off to morning chores. Yes, chores. Being in the army doesn't exempt you from domestic life. You sweep mud out of tents, haul firewood, and dig new latrine trenches with a shovel that somehow manages to splinter your hands and weigh more than your rifle. The only upside is that the cold keeps the smell down. Slightly. Some guys are assigned kitchen duty, which is more like experimental chemistry involving beans. Today's menu: salt pork again, but diced and thrown into something optimistically labelled as stew. There's also coffee. Precious, bitter, miraculous coffee. It's boiled in an enormous blackened pot over a low fire, and it tastes like someone strained burnt soil through an old sock. But it's hot, and it's yours, unless someone steals it, and someone will. Welcome to the black market of caffeine. Coffee is the true currency of Civil War camps. You can trade it for almost anything. Extra rations, clean socks, even favours like first dibs on washing in the good water barrel, the one with fewer floating things. You quickly learn to keep your coffee stash hidden, usually in your sock or rolled up in your bedroll. You also learn that Ellis, the sock boiler from yesterday, isn't just a hygiene hero. He's also running an underground coffee ring. Somehow he's got real beans from a supply wagon no one else saw arrive. He's trading it cup by cup, and he's got a bodyguard. You're not kidding. Your contribution to the black market? Humour. You've got a decent singing voice and a knack for impersonating Old Rope's weird limp, which gets laughs at night. You trade entertainment for an extra biscuit. In this army, that's practically currency backed by gold. Later in the morning, there's drill practice. Again, you line up in rows and attempt coordinated movements under the watchful gaze of Sergeant Black, a wiry man whose moustache could file paperwork by itself. He's not a screamer. He's worse. He's calm, cold, disappointed. The kind of man whose silence haunts your dreams. "March," he says. You step forward with your left foot just as the man next to you goes right. Your formation immediately collapses like a wet sandwich. Sergeant Black sighs deeply and says, "Again." You'll hear that word a lot. You drill for hours, practicing loading your rifle until it's second nature. Ram the cartridge, tap the powder, bite the paper, drop the mini ball, ram it home, pull back the hammer, cap it. Over and over, your fingers bleed, your mouth tastes like sulphur. Your rifle smells like it's developing its own personality, and it's grumpy. Historical note for you. The average trained Civil War soldier could load and fire 3 times per minute. That's 30 seconds between shots, assuming nobody's shooting at you, your hands aren't shaking, and your musket doesn't misfire. Under pressure, cut that number in half, and hope your enemy's aim is worse than yours. You break for lunch, hardtack again, now soaked in whatever passes for broth. You don't ask questions anymore, you just eat. You've become a vacuum for calories. During the afternoon lull, guys lounge around doing anything to stay sane. One group is carving dice from bits of bone, another is making a chessboard out of scratched tin and walnut shells. Someone's writing a love letter, reading it out loud for edits, and being heckled mercilessly. You sit on a stump and scribble in your own letter home. You describe camp life like it's a summer job gone wildly wrong. You lie a little. We're well fed, you write. The boots are breaking in, you write. I'm not scared, you lie. Then comes the weird part of camp life. Ghost stories and gallows humour. Every soldier has a story. A cousin who saw a ghost walking through camp. A dead horse that won't stay buried. A drummer boy who vanished during roll call, never to be seen again. You laugh at most of them, but not all. Nights in the camp have a way of making those stories feel real. Shadows move weird. The trees whisper things if you haven't slept enough. One guy insists that a grave dug near the latrine shifts a few inches every night. No one believes him until they notice it too. Captain Willis says it's probably just runoff erosion. The man who sleeps closest to it refuses to sleep at all now. Now here's your quirky bit. A private named Myron has a pet chicken named Abigail. He rescued her from a burning barn on the march in, and now she lives in his bedroll. Abigail has somehow avoided being eaten, mostly because she lays eggs exactly once every 3 days, like clockwork. That's rare, valuable, and suspicious. Some claim she's a witch. Myron claims she's just a lady of principles. You decide to stay out of it. As dusk falls, camp takes on a softer hum. The air cools, fires crackle, and the laughter gets quieter. You all sit in a loose circle and sing, badly but sincerely. One guy has a fiddle, another taps rhythm on a mess tin. You hum along to a tune you barely know. The firelight flickers over faces that feel older than they did a week ago. This is the part that historians still argue about. What held soldiers together? Was it ideology, patriotism, sheer stubbornness? Or was it moments like this, shared songs, laughter, chicken eggs, and the universal need to not go insane in the mud? You don't have an answer, but you do know this. When the fire gets low and the embers glow just right, for a moment, this feels like a strange kind of home. You lie down that night with a full stomach, 2 dry socks, miracle, and the hope that tomorrow might finally bring something different. You're not ready for battle, but you are getting used to this. Which honestly is terrifying in its own way. You're starting to get the rhythm of things. Wake up, scratch something, line up, march, sweat. Eat something you barely recognise, laugh at jokes that wouldn't be funny anywhere else. Repeat. Civil War boot camp is like some kind of cruel summer camp, but with more dysentery and fewer arts and crafts. Today, though, things feel different. There's a buzz in the air, a quiet urgency. Word spreads fast around camp. Drill inspection. That means the officers are coming. Real brass. The kind with polished buttons and boots that don't leak. Maybe even a general. It's your chance to prove you're not just a bunch of wool-clad hobos with muskets. Maybe someone gets promoted. Maybe someone gets reassigned. Maybe you get to shower. That last one is definitely false. The sergeants are frantic. You're told to scrub your rifle until it shines, polish your boots even though they're mostly mud and bad decisions, and stand up straight for once in your life. Captain Willis says, "If any of you scratch yourselves in front of a general, I'll personally shave your heads with a bayonet." So you clean, you shine, you pull your jacket tight to hide the fact that it still fits like a wet curtain. Your canteen leaks a perfect circle down your leg, and you pretend that's on purpose. Then comes marching, again, for the 100th time. You and 100 other boys move in slow, jerky unison across the parade ground. Arms swing, rifles bounce. A drum somewhere tries to hold the beat but loses interest halfway through. And finally the officers arrive. You've never seen so many horses in one place. Big, shiny animals with fancy saddles and men sitting on them like they were born that way. The general, who might be General Hooker, or at least someone trying very hard to look like him, has an impressive moustache and a disinterested squint. He barely glances your way. The real inspection is run by a captain in a white sash and gloves that somehow stay clean. He looks at your rifle, your boots, your fingernails, seriously, and then makes a note on a clipboard. You're a number, a blur, a speck in the gears of a very large, very disorganized machine. Still, somehow, you pass. Later that day, you learn about Manual of Arms, which is a fancy phrase for how not to look like an idiot while holding a gun. You practice saluting, spinning your rifle, standing at attention, and not blinking when a superior walks by. It's the military equivalent of theatre school, and about as useful in combat, but they don't tell you that yet. Then comes the part you've been dreading, the bayonet charge drill. You're lined up in a field facing a bunch of straw dummies mounted on poles. They look vaguely human, if your idea of human includes button eyes and sticks for spines. The command is barked, "Charge!" and you run, shouting, screaming, stabbing hay. It's awkward and weird and weirdly exhausting. You're winded before you even reach the dummy. When you do, you jab forward, but your bayonet gets stuck and almost rips out of your hands. The sergeant says, "If that dummy were a Johnny Reb, he'd be using your gun as a hat rack." You're not sure what that means, but it sounds bad. Historical fact time. The bayonet, despite all this practice, is barely used in actual fighting. Most charges fall apart before they reach stabbing range. But the military still drills it relentlessly, because the psychological effect of 1,000 men with bayonets charging at you is real, even if most of them trip on the way. Back in camp, you're exhausted, bruised, and somehow still expected to write home. You scribble something about honour and training and how you haven't stabbed anyone important yet. Then there's roll call again, followed by a reading of the day's orders. You half listen until you hear something new. Skirmish training tomorrow. Prepare full packs. Your stomach flips. Skirmish training is code for mock battle, often with live ammo. It's not real war, but it's closer than anything you've done so far. And it means being out of camp, sleeping in a ditch somewhere, marching through woods, eating only what you carry. You pack your gear that night in nervous silence. One blanket, one extra pair of socks, Ellis's boiled gift, a handful of hardtack, some salt pork wrapped in paper, and your coffee pouch, hidden deep, deep in your boot. You tuck your cartridge box tight against your hip, check your cap pouch, and give your rifle a nervous pat. "Don't jam," you whisper. It doesn't respond, which is probably for the best. Here's a quirky bit to lighten the mood. Someone in your unit has painted a face on their cartridge box. Big googly eyes, crooked smile, says it's to confuse the enemy, or maybe himself. He calls it Captain Boom. The officers hate it. The rest of you quietly love it. Before sleep, you sit around the fire one last time with the others. Myron plucks a tune on a banjo he got in a trade for 6 eggs and half a pair of boots. Ellis roasts a sweet potato he swears is magical. The stars are clear and bright above you, sharp against the black. Then someone brings up a question that's been floating around all week. Will you actually shoot someone when the time comes? Silence falls. A few say of course too quickly. One says, "Not if I can help it." Another says nothing at all. You're not sure how you feel. You know you'll fire your rifle, but aiming at a man, watching him fall, that's something else. And you know, deep in your wool-wrapped, bug-bitten bones, that skirmish training is going to bring you one step closer to finding out. You lie down for what might be your last night in camp for a while. The ground is familiar now. The stars blink like they know something you don't. And as your eyes close, you feel that odd tension again. The strange knot between fear and excitement. Between the boy you were and whatever comes next. Tomorrow it gets realer. You wake up in the dark. Not dawn dark. Middle of the night dark. A boot nudges your ribs and a voice growls, "Pack up. We move in 10. You groan and try to sit up, but your blanket is wrapped around your legs like a vengeful octopus. There's a cold, wet wind slicing through the tents, and your breath comes out in puffs. Everything aches. Your joints crack like you're 80, and your socks, despite Ellis's magical boiling, are still damp. You shuffle outside with the rest of your unit. Half the men look like they dressed while falling out of bed. A few haven't even buttoned their coats. Captain Willis is already mounted, chewing on his eternal cigar and barking orders that sound more like grunts. You shoulder your pack. It's heavier than it should be, and it creaks ominously. Your rifle rests against your shoulder, cold and stiff. The strap digs into your collarbone like it's trying to make a permanent home there. Then you march, and march, and march. You leave the camp behind. It's smoke, it's mud, it's smell of half-cooked pork and nervous sweat, and head out into the wilderness. The road is barely a road, just a muddy trail flanked by trees and the occasional confused cow. The trees loom tall and dripping with mist, the branches clawing over the path like they're trying to keep you in. It starts to rain. Because of course it does. Not a storm, just a steady, stubborn drizzle that turns the trail into a squishy mess. Mud creeps up your boots, and soon your trousers are soaked up to the knee. Every step makes an awful slurping sound. After 4 hours of this, your unit stops near a creek and sets up what could generously be called camp. It's just a clearing with some stumps, a few half-buried rocks, and a dead squirrel no one volunteers to touch. You huddle in a semicircle under a sagging canvas sheet and pretend it's a tent. Then comes skirmish training. You line up in the trees opposite another unit, men you've never seen before who look just as miserable as you. Officers blow whistles, shout commands, and the game begins. Only it's not really a game because you're using live ammunition. The goal is to simulate an ambush to teach you how to move, aim, fire, and not die in the process. The problem is, no one has a clue what they're doing. Half the men shoot too early, the other half forget to reload. One guy drops his rifle and screams like he's been shot. He hasn't. He just fell in a puddle and panicked. You take cover behind a tree and fire off a round, the recoil snapping your shoulder back. Smoke billows in front of your face, and the smell of black powder fills your nose. You reload by instinct now. Bite the cartridge, pour the powder, ram the ball, cap the nipple, and fire again. The crack of rifles echoes through the forest. The smell is thick and sharp, a mix of sulphur and wet wool. For a moment you forget it's a drill. You crouch low, adrenaline buzzing in your limbs, and then someone blows a whistle twice. That's the signal to cease fire. You stand up, heart hammering, no one's hit. A miracle. But everyone looks shaken. Even the officers are quieter than usual. And here's a good historical nugget. Early Civil War battles were filled with confusion just like this. Green units, poor communication, and friendly fire were common. Some soldiers in their first fights would load their rifles 5 or 6 times without firing, out of sheer panic. When those guns were recovered, they were packed tight with ball after ball, powder uselessly layered in. After the drill, you regroup by the creek. Everyone's jumpy. Myron keeps checking his rifle like it might explode on its own. Ellis, strangely calm, offers hardtack around. "Builds nerves," he says. He's wrong. Dinner is salt pork again, boiled until it becomes an unidentifiable paste. There's coffee, thank the heavens, but it's weak. Someone must have watered it down. Tempers flare. You watch 2 men nearly come to blows over a pinch of sugar. War doesn't just reveal character, it distills it into something raw and unpredictable. And now for the fringe fact of the day, there were actual coffee riots in some Union camps. When supply lines failed or rations were cut, tempers boiled over. Men would steal, hoard, and even fight for coffee. One captain noted in his journal that a soldier would rather go into battle barefoot than without caffeine. You feel that deeply. That night, you and your tent mates try to dry your socks by the fire. It works, sort of. Your socks are dry, but now they smell like roast goat and your toes are covered in ash. You go to sleep anyway. You're too tired to care. The next morning you march again. Skirmish training continues day after day. Up hills, through woods, across rivers you didn't even know were there. You sleep on roots, drink creek water, and find twigs in places twigs should never be. But something strange happens. You get better. You stop fumbling your cartridges. Your boots feel like extensions of your legs instead of torture devices. You can hit a target sometimes. You move with your unit in something resembling cohesion. You don't trip as often. You even sleep more deeply, because your body's too exhausted to do otherwise. And maybe most important, you start trusting the guys around you. Myron, Ellis, the whispering guy who's always writing in a little notebook. These aren't just strangers anymore. They're people you'd probably die next to. You hope it doesn't come to that. But the bond is there. There's debate even today about how useful this kind of training really was. Some historians argue it wasn't nearly enough, that most soldiers still went into battle dangerously unprepared. Others say it was the shared suffering, the marching, the mud, the missed meals that made the difference. You're starting to think it's both. Technique matters. But so does the guy next to you being willing to watch your back when the bullets start flying. After a week you return to camp. It's the same camp, but you're not the same. You walk differently. You carry your rifle like it belongs to you now. Your uniform still itches and your boots still leak, but something about the way the officers look at you has changed. And when a new batch of recruits arrives, fresh-faced, confused, wide-eyed, you catch yourself giving them directions, telling them where the driest tents are, warning them about Ellis's coffee taxes, explaining how not to pack their blankets unless they want a squirrel sleeping in it. You've become something dangerous, experienced. Which also means, of course, that you're probably getting shipped out soon. Mail call hits just after dinner, and for once the stew doesn't taste like dishwater filtered through an old sock. Maybe your taste buds have just given up, but tonight it's at least warm, and someone found onions. Actual onions. You chew each piece like it's a religious experience. Then the lieutenant strides through the camp waving a small stack of crumpled envelopes. "Mail! If you don't hear your name, maybe write home more," he shouts, because he thinks he's hilarious. He calls out names one by one. You hold your breath. Nothing. He moves on. Myron gets a letter and a neatly folded handkerchief. Ellis gets 3, probably family or admirers of his coffee empire. You get nada. But it's okay. Kind of. You didn't expect anything. Maybe your family didn't have time. Maybe they don't know where to send letters. Or maybe, just maybe, they're afraid to write because they think you're already gone. Instead of sulking, you lean against a tree near the edge of camp and watch the sun lower itself into a smear of purple over the horizon. The air smells like smoke, boiled leather, and the sweet rot of trampled grass. It's almost peaceful if you squint past the tents and latrines. This is when the stories come out. Evening is ghost story hour in a Civil War camp, whether anyone calls it that or not. And tonight, it starts with Ellis. "Back home," he begins, eyes half closed. "My cousin swore there was a ghost dog that guarded the old mine. White fur, red eyes, never barked, just watched. Every time someone saw it, a man died the next day." Everyone around the fire listens too closely. You're all tired, your nerves strung thin from drills and rumours and that creeping sense that something big is coming. So ghost stories hit harder than usual. Another guy chimes in, says he heard a company went missing last winter, just vanished in the snow, not a single footprint left behind. "Like the trees swallowed them," he says. His voice is a whisper now. And Myron, of course, raises the bar. "Heard about a soldier who got hit right through the heart," he mutters. "But he didn't fall, just stared ahead and kept marching. Didn't even blink. Stayed like that until the fighting stopped. Then he sat down and melted." You all laugh. Kind of. It's nervous laughter. The kind that comes when you're not sure if you're laughing at a joke or at your own impending doom. The war hasn't even reached you yet, and already the line between real and not real feels paper thin. Historically, these moments mattered. Letters and campfire tales were a major part of soldier culture. They were morale boosters, pressure valves, and sometimes, like now, distractions from the crushing sense of waiting. Because that's what this part of soldiering is. Waiting. You train, you march, you clean, you try to sleep, you wait. For orders, for mail, for food, for death. And while you wait, you tell stories, because silence is where fear breeds. Eventually the fire dies down, and you retreat to your tent. You and Ellis lie there, staring at the canvas ceiling like it's going to peel back and show the stars. "I miss noise," Ellis mutters. "Not the shouting kind. The good kind. My brother used to play harmonica after dinner. Real bad. Drove me nuts. Now I'd pay a week's rations to hear it." You nod. You miss weird things too. The smell of laundry drying. The creak of the front porch. The feel of shoes that didn't come with blisters built in. No one tells you homesickness can be this physical. It settles in your muscles, makes your limbs heavy. Sleep is a mess of half dreams and full-on night sweats. At one point, someone outside screams in their sleep. No one moves. Just another nightmare. Business as usual. In the morning, the sky's clear and sharp blue, almost fake-looking. You have a rare luxury. A couple hours off. No marching. No drills. You finally sit down to write a letter. Not because you have anything clever to say, but because you need to remind yourself that you're still connected to a world outside this canvas and chaos. You write about the food, could be worse, the weather, mostly damp, and training, my shoulder still hurts. You don't mention the ghost stories, the guy who coughed blood last night, or the way Myron sometimes mutters names in his sleep. But you do ask for socks, always socks. And here's a quirky fact, the most requested item in soldier letters during the war. Not money, not food, socks. Hand-knit, warm, dry, non-blister-inducing socks. You're starting to believe a good pair could stop a war. Later you get to send your letter through a passing mail wagon. The courier is a teen, maybe 15, wearing a coat 2 sizes too big and a belt that keeps sliding down. He's cheerful, says he's heading to Washington next, then on to Philadelphia. You slip your letter into the sack and feel something like hope. Small, shaky, but real. That afternoon your unit is visited by a chaplain. He's got a thin voice and a thicker Bible, and he starts reading verses to the men while you're all sitting around pretending not to listen. But some do. Some close their eyes. One guy crosses himself 3 times, even though he's not Catholic. Religion in camp is complicated. For some, it's comfort. For others, it's background noise. But for many, it's a fragile tether to sanity. Even non-believers listen, because sometimes hearing someone talk like the world still makes sense is worth more than all the coffee in Ellis's stash. Here's your open debate for the night. Historians still argue about just how religious Civil War soldiers truly were. Some say faith was central, something they clung to in the chaos. Others say religion was mostly ceremonial, used by officers to inspire or control. From where you're sitting, under a sky bruised with a fading sun, it feels like a bit of both. Evening settles in, camp starts to quiet. Someone plays a sad little tune on a homemade flute. A few men hum along. The guy with the notebook reads a poem aloud, badly, but with heart. You don't understand half of it, but it doesn't matter. It's the act that counts. You lie down in your tent, blanket pulled up to your chin, and stare into the dark. You still haven't fired a shot in anger, but you know it's coming. You can feel it in the way officers avoid your eyes, in the coded way they speak to each other, in the way everyone's packing a little tighter, walking a little faster, laughing a little less. The waiting is almost over, and suddenly you're not sure you're ready. You wake up before the bugle today, not because you're well rested, please let's not pretend, but because the whole camp has this strange hum to it. Not a real hum, not a sound exactly, more like a collective tightening, like the whole place is holding its breath. When the bugle finally does go off, it sounds sharper than usual, crisper. You sit up, pull your boots on over half-dry socks and stagger into the morning light. Officers are pacing. Captain Willis has traded his chewed cigar stub for a full lit one, which he promptly forgets and lets burn down to the paper. That's how you know something's happening. There's an order posted near the cook fire and it confirms what you already suspected. You're shipping out. The word spreads faster than smoke. You're being deployed. No more drills, no more pretend charges, no more dummies stuffed with straw. This is it. You're headed south, into the real thing. You're going to war. The air in camp shifts. Some guys start writing letters with a fury. Others clean their rifles for the 5th time that week. One guy just sits quietly, staring into nothing like he's already halfway there. You roll your bedroll tighter than you ever have. Pack your extra shirt, your now ragged diary, a tin of coffee grounds guarded like it's family treasure, and tuck a letter from home inside your coat. Folded and unfolded so many times the paper's practically transparent. Then, as the wagons are being loaded and the tents come down, something unusual happens. The spy talk begins. Someone leans over during chow and whispers, "You know they caught a Confederate spy just 2 camps over, right? Guy was disguised as a washerwoman, wore a bonnet and everything." Another replies, "I heard it was a goat. They trained it to walk through our lines and deliver messages on its collar." You nearly choke on your hardtack. A goat spy? Smartest animal in the war, the guy insists. Name was Cornbread. You can't tell if he's joking, but here's the weird part. Spies were everywhere during the Civil War. Real ones, not goats. Probably. There were double agents, women disguised as men disguised as women, freedmen running entire information networks through Confederate territory, and Union scouts who could pass as local farmers just by changing their hat and the way they walked. One famous Union spy, Elizabeth Van Lew, ran a full-blown spy ring out of Richmond, baking coded messages into loaves of bread and hiding intel in hollowed-out eggs. Meanwhile, Confederate agents slipped through northern camps disguised as peddlers, ministers, even photographers. You're told, very unofficially, to keep your eyes open. For what exactly no one says. But now every stranger looks suspicious. A horse tied too close to the officer's tent. Probably an informant. That guy selling apples from a cart. Almost definitely a Confederate general in disguise. You think the paranoia might be setting in early. That night you get assigned to guard duty, which would feel like an honour if it didn't come with the bone-deep exhaustion of marching all day and the chilling realisation that you're now guarding your own life. You walk your post slowly, rifle on shoulder, watching shadows that grow longer with every hour. There's a moon, but it's veiled by clouds, so everything comes in shades of grey. You hear twigs snap, and your whole body tightens like a spring. You grip your rifle. It's just a possum. Probably. You spend the rest of your watch mentally rehearsing what you'd say if you caught a spy. Something dramatic, maybe. Halt, in the name of the Union. Except when you try to whisper it out loud, it sounds like your voice cracked in two. Cool, real cool. The next day, the wagons roll out. You're part of the line, one of hundreds trudging down a dirt road bordered by fields and forest, each of you a walking bundle of cloth, iron, nerves, and sweat. You cross paths with another column headed the opposite way. Confederate prisoners, real ones. Some stare straight ahead. Some look at you with faces that could be mirrors, same age, same sunburn, same blisters, just a different coat. A few mutter something under their breath. One says, "We'll trade you boots." You almost consider it. Then a soldier beside you, one of the newer guys, asks the question everyone's been thinking. "So, if we do catch a spy, what do we do?" Ellis, walking beside him, says without hesitation, "You hang him." The group goes quiet. That's not just talk. That's the actual punishment. Civil War armies didn't mess around with espionage. If you're caught in the wrong uniform with the wrong papers, you don't get a trial. You get a rope and a tree, simple as that. Of course, not everyone agrees on who counts as a spy. Is it just those who sneak behind enemy lines? Or does smuggling letters count? What about a kid running a message to his uncle in another regiment? Historians still debate this. Some say the Union was too harsh on Southern informants. Others argue they had to be. It was total war, after all. The lines were blurry. Morality was relative. And war, as you're learning fast, rarely gives neat answers. That night, you reach a rail junction and stop for rest. The officers talk logistics. You talk nonsense. Someone starts a rumour that your destination is Tennessee. Another says Virginia. Someone else says Canada, which makes no sense but gets a laugh. You curl up on the ground under your blanket, which now smells like sweat, gun oil and pine sap. It's weirdly comforting. You think about spies again, about secrets, about how out here everyone has something they're not saying, including you. Because truthfully, you've been afraid since the minute you held that rifle. You're afraid of killing. You're afraid of dying. But mostly, you're afraid of freezing up when it counts, of letting your friends down, of being the guy who runs. You don't tell anyone this, of course. Instead, you stare into the dark and tell yourself the same thing every man here is whispering inside his own head. Just make it through tomorrow. You don't wake up the next morning so much as you're yanked back into existence by a voice yelling, "On your feet! Skirmish line in 10! There's no bugle. Just boots stomping and the chaotic symphony of straps buckling, rifles clattering and curses flying like birds startled from a field. You sit up, heart already thudding. It's not a drill. You can feel it. The air has that electric weight, like right before a thunderstorm, except this one's made of lead and fear. The night before, you were on your way south, travelling by wagon and foot, with no solid word about your unit's final destination. But during the quiet hours, everything changed. Scouts came galloping in, mud-splattered and wide-eyed. Rumours followed behind them like a cold wind. Confederate skirmishers nearby. Small force, moving fast, could be scouting ahead of something bigger. Your unit was ordered to move out early, and now, just after dawn, you're being told to gear up and get ready. This is it. Your first fight. You're not alone in your nervous energy. Around you, boys you've marched beside for weeks are trying to look brave, but their hands shake as they pack ammo and tie down their gear. Even Ellis looks serious now. He's not boiling socks this morning. He's staring off into the woods like he's trying to read the leaves. Captain Willis walks down the line, his face a tight, grim knot. "Keep your wits. Stay in line. Don't waste your shot." That's all he says. No speech, no drama, just the essentials. You shoulder your rifle, double-check your cap pouch, and bite the inside of your cheek hard enough to taste blood. It's strangely grounding. Then the march begins, off the road, into the woods. The trees are close and dripping with last night's rain. The ground sucks at your boots with every step, and the underbrush snaps and rustles like it's trying to get you caught. You move slow, quiet. Not quite a whisper, but close enough. The line spreads out, single file first, then in a loose skirmish formation. You're near the middle. Not at the front, thankfully, but not far back enough to feel safe. Your breathing gets shallow. Your heart climbs up your throat. Every branch becomes a rifle barrel. Every shadow looks like a man. And then, it happens. The first shot. It comes from your left, sharp and flat, and much closer than you expected. A puff of smoke, then another, then a voice shouting, "Down!" You hit the dirt instinctively, face full of moss and mud, your rifle clenched in both hands like a lifeline. Bullets snap through the trees above you. The sound isn't what you imagined. It's louder, sharper, more like tearing paper than booming thunder. You roll to your side, aim toward the flashes in the woods, and fire. Your musket bucks against your shoulder. You can't tell if you hit anything. Probably not. Doesn't matter. You reload as fast as you can, fingers fumbling with the cartridge, your mouth dry as bone. Your second shot comes quicker, more controlled. You peek from behind a tree, spot a grey shape moving through the leaves, and fire. The shape jerks. But again, you can't be sure if it was you or someone else. Someone near you screams. A boy from another company. He's holding his leg, rocking back and forth. Blood is pooling around his knee like spilled ink. A medic appears out of nowhere, drags him back. You barely notice. Your mind is narrow now, tunnel vision, focused on movement and sound. Here's your cold historical truth. Most Civil War skirmishes were confusing, chaotic, and short. Unlike the Hollywood version of war, clean lines, heroic charges, real battles often looked more like poorly organised chaos with smoke, screaming, and blind luck. And now for the quirky fringe fact. Some soldiers carried good luck charms into battle. Rabbit's feet, family Bibles, locks of hair. One man from Michigan swore by a bullet he carried in his breast pocket. A bullet that had already hit him in another fight and bounced off a pocket watch. You? You've got a crumpled letter from your mother and a coffee bean tucked into your boot. That counts. Back to the fight. It doesn't last long. 15, 20 minutes at most. The Confederate scouts retreat. Or maybe they were never there in full strength. It's hard to tell. The smoke settles, and your breathing slows. You stand up, legs shaking, ears still ringing. You check your rifle. You check your limbs. Still whole. You're alive. You look around and realise so is most of your unit. A few wounded, one dead. A boy from Company D. You didn't know him well, but you recognise the way his mouth is open, like he had one last thing to say. The officers gather and start issuing new orders. Casualties are carried back on stretchers made of spare jackets and tree limbs. The medic uses whiskey for pain and hope. Captain Willis gives you all 10 minutes to eat something. You chew on hardtack with shaking hands, your stomach unsure if it wants food or to throw up the one bite it already has. Ellis finally speaks. "Could have been worse," he mutters. You nod. It's the only thing to say. Later you sit beneath a tree, rifle across your knees, and try to make sense of what just happened. You fired your weapon. You may have hit someone, you may have killed someone, but here's the part no one talks about in campfire ghost stories. You don't feel triumphant. You feel heavy, hollow. Like the part of you that thought it would be exciting is packed up and left in silence. There's a quiet debate among historians about this moment. The first time a soldier engages in real combat. Some say it hardened them. Others believe it broke them slowly over time from the inside out. You feel like a stone dropped in water. There's a splash, then silence, then the ripples begin. That night, as your unit camps near a creek with shallow banks and cold water, you clean your rifle without being told. You do it carefully, slowly, like it's the only thing tethering you to sanity. Myron sits beside you and offers a piece of jerky. "So," he says, chewing, "you think that was it? You think that was war?" You shake your head. "Nah," Ellis says from the fire, "that was the preview." He's probably right. The next morning you wake up with a stiff back, a splitting headache, and a vague, nauseating memory of the fight. It rolls over you in flashes. The smoke, the screams, the wet snap of musket fire echoing through the woods like angry thunder. You didn't sleep much. Nobody did. Even Ellis looks like he's aged 5 years overnight. The camp is quiet, not peaceful, hushed. Men move slower, jokes fall flat. The cook forgets to salt the pork and nobody complains. The weight of your first skirmish still hangs in the air like fog that won't lift. You notice it in the way Myron stares at his boots for 10 minutes straight, or how the guy who used to hum while shaving now does it in total silence. One of the younger boys, who didn't even fire his weapon yesterday, is sitting on a log just crying. No one mocks him. No one even looks away. You all feel it. But there's no time for processing. Captain Willis gives a short briefing and it's straight to the point. You're moving again. Orders came down. You're part of an advance unit heading to scout enemy positions near a ridge just west of the river. The Confederate army is on the move and you're the eyes and ears. You load up, shoulders aching under the weight of gear and everything you didn't say last night. The march is long and hot. November sun glances off your wool like a punishment from the sky. The boots you've almost broken in decide today's the day to start blistering again, and the coffee ran out yesterday, so your body is fueled entirely by nerves and spite. After a few miles, you come to a wide field lined with scattered trees and crumbling fences. A lieutenant you've never met holds up a hand, and the column halts. You're ordered to form a picket line. Basically, spread out, keep low, and look dangerous. You're bait. Very brave, very expendable bait. You post up behind a fallen log, rifle ready, and try to look intimidating despite the fact that you feel like a wet sock with legs. A few others take cover nearby, Myron behind a rock, Ellis crouched in a bush. You wait, and wait, and wait some more. That's the thing about war. You think it's going to be one long string of action, but most of it? Waiting. Staring at nothing and imagining something. Your hands cramp from gripping the musket too tightly. Your eyes start inventing movement where there isn't any. Every bird becomes a rebel scout. Every breeze sounds like whispering boots. Here's a true and slightly hilarious historical fact. Many Civil War soldiers actually fired too high in battle, out of nerves, or inexperience, or maybe subconsciously not wanting to kill. When rifles were recovered from battlefields, they'd find entire trees stripped of bark 6 feet above ground level. In some cases, they found rifles loaded 3, 4, 5 times over, never fired once. Soldiers forgot to shoot, or froze, or just couldn't. You don't know what kind of soldier you are yet. But after yesterday, you know you can fire. You just don't know if you ever want to again. Hours pass. The sun moves. Someone hands you a piece of jerky and a canteen. You don't remember who. The moment blurs. Then just as your eyes start to flutter closed, movement. From the far edge of the tree line, maybe 200 yards away, a figure steps into view. Grey coat, rifle slung low, then another, then 3 more. It's not a full regiment. Maybe a scouting party. They haven't seen you yet. The officer whispers down the line, "Wait for the signal." Your mouth goes dry. Your heart kicks into high gear. You raise your rifle slowly, silently. Your fingers move without thinking. Bite the cartridge, pour the powder, load the ball, cap the nipple. You don't even hear the world around you anymore. Then, the whistle. You fire. The crack of musketry erupts down the line. Men shout. Smoke billows instantly, thick and blinding. You reload. Fire again. The figures scatter. You see one fall, but then he's gone in the haze. The Confederate scouts return fire, but they're uncoordinated and they weren't expecting a trap. Within minutes, they're retreating, vanishing into the trees. Just like that, it's over. Again. You stare down your barrel, smoke still drifting from the muzzle. You're shaking, but it's controlled now. Familiar even. That's the part that scares you. It's starting to feel routine. After the dust settles, you move forward with the others, checking the field. 2 enemy dead, 1 wounded. A boy, maybe your age, bleeding from the shoulder, trying not to cry in front of you. Your officer makes a quick decision. Take him as a prisoner. You carry him back between 2 men. He doesn't say anything, just stares straight ahead, lips pale. And here's the fringe fact. Captured enemy soldiers were sometimes treated surprisingly well. Not always, and certainly not in every place or under every officer, but especially early in the war, there was a strange mutual respect between the 2 sides. You'd fight, maybe even kill each other, then sit across a campfire from one another the next day. Some men even traded tobacco, buttons, or coffee during informal ceasefires. Back at your temporary camp, the prisoner is tended to by your medic. A few guys glare at him, but no one harms him. He's just a kid, same as you. That night, as the fire burns low and someone finally pulls out a harmonica that sounds like it's been chewed by a horse, you find yourself sitting next to Ellis. He doesn't say much, just takes a stick and pokes at the embers. Then, out of nowhere, he mutters, "You didn't shoot high?" You glance over. "What?" "You didn't shoot high. I saw you. Aim was clean. Thought maybe you missed on purpose, but you didn't." You stare into the fire, unsure whether that's a compliment or a confession. He adds, "You might survive this." You want to believe him. You do. But in the back of your mind, you still see the grey blur falling through the smoke. You still hear the snap of the rifle. You still wonder if it was you. And that night, as you finally lie down under the stars, your rifle beside you and your boots still damp, you whisper to yourself, just make it through tomorrow. It's becoming your prayer. The first thing you notice when you wake up is the smell. It's not the usual medley of smoke, unwashed wool, and someone's terrible attempt at hardtack pancakes. No, this smell is sharper, metallic. Your nose twitches, your stomach tightens, and for a few long seconds you can't quite place it. Then you remember the prisoner, the blood, the boy in grey, the skirmish. You sit up fast, too fast. Your back protests, your ribs crackle like dry kindling, and your legs are basically tree trunks with regrets. The fire's burned low, the camp's quiet, and someone's snoring nearby like a sawmill. The prisoner is still there, bandaged, resting under a thin wool blanket near the surgeon's tent. He's awake now, propped up on one elbow. He looks over at you, his expression unreadable. Not angry, not scared, just watching. You nod. He nods back, and that's it. No words. Just that weird, silent acknowledgement that you're both kids in a situation designed by adults with more ambition than common sense. You get the distinct feeling that, under different circumstances, you might have been friends. You might have shared a cider at a harvest festival. Now you're enemies. Sort of. Maybe. It's a strange reality of this war. Your enemy often looks just like you. Same age, same dirt under the fingernails, same confused gaze when someone starts shooting. You've probably read in books that wars are fought between sides. Union and Confederacy, blue and grey, right and wrong. But here, in the mud and the fog, it's more like person versus person. Just scared, tired people in mismatched coats pointing guns at each other because someone else told them to. You shake the thought loose and go to clean your rifle. Again. Cleaning your musket has become like a morning ritual now, like brushing your teeth, if your toothbrush weighed 10 pounds and could kill a man from 200 yards. While you're working the ramrod, you catch a bit of gossip floating down the camp line. Someone's got gangrene, lost a toe, maybe two. The details are vague, exaggerated, and probably wrong, but it's enough to make you look down at your own feet, still damp from yesterday's march, still squished into wool socks that haven't been technically dry since early October. You change your socks. You offer a silent prayer of thanks to Ellis and his sock-boiling wisdom. You owe him more than coffee at this point. You owe him toes. Then it's off to work, because even after a skirmish you don't get to relax. The officers have deemed today a maintenance and morale day. That translates to chopping wood, digging new latrines, cleaning weapons, and pretending you're not mentally unravelling like an old bootlace. You're assigned to latrine detail, which is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. A shovel, a hole, an overwhelming smell. You try to detach your mind from your body and pretend you're building a well. For a very unfortunate town, still, it gives you time to think. About the prisoner, about the blur of the skirmish, about how yesterday you saw your first dead body up close, not in a book, not as a story, a real person. His eyes were still open. You wonder if anyone closed them. Here's your required historical moment. The mini ball, the round you're firing from your musket, isn't actually a ball. It's a conical piece of lead designed to spin through rifled barrels. It hits harder and tears through flesh in horrifying ways. That's why amputations became the go-to solution. You get hit in the arm, that arm's probably coming off, hit in the leg, say goodbye from the knee down. There wasn't much finesse. There wasn't much time. The Union used millions of these rounds during the war. They're small, brutal, and incredibly efficient at ruining your day. Here's your quirky fact to pair with that horror. Some soldiers believed that chewing bullets before battle helped with nerves, or luck. They'd bite them, carry them in their mouths like charms. It didn't help, of course, just gave them lead poisoning. But hey, nothing says Civil War logic like poisoning yourself with good intentions. Around midday, you finally get something warm in your stomach. Real beans. Not the kind pretending to be soup, but actual seasoned beans. The cook even scrounged up some salt pork scraps that have more meat than gristle. You sit in the grass, lean back against your pack, and savour each bite like it's your last meal. It might be. You're starting to get that now. Every meal is possibly your last. Captain Willis calls a meeting before sunset. Everyone gathers in a loose semicircle. He stands up on a stump like he's about to declare war on gravity, and tells you what you've all been bracing for. This was the beginning. We've been ordered to rendezvous with the main column. That means more marching, bigger battles. We're no longer rear guard. We're front line. A few guys mutter under their breath. You feel your stomach twist. Then he adds, "You all did well yesterday. Proud of you. We'll likely lose some of you soon, so I figure I ought to say it while I can." It's probably the most human thing he's said since you arrived. Afterward, some of the men gather around the fire and start sharing stories again. Not ghost stories this time, home stories. Ellis talks about the maple trees in his backyard, says they used to tap sap every spring and make syrup so thick you could patch holes in boots with it. Myron talks about his sister's wedding, how he almost missed it because he fell in the river the morning of and had to walk 4 miles in damp breeches. You tell them about your first job, about the horse that kicked you in the shin, and how you limped for 2 weeks but didn't say anything because you were trying to impress the blacksmith's daughter. They laugh, they clap your shoulder, it feels warm, real. And here's your scholarly debate to round out the day. Did camaraderie or ideology keep Union soldiers in the fight? Some historians argue they were true believers, abolitionists, patriots, defenders of democracy. Others insist it was the guy beside you in the trench, the bond, not the banner. From where you sit, booted and bruised and clutching a tin cup of weak coffee, the answer seems obvious. It's both. Because fighting for a cause is noble, but fighting for your friends? That's survival. The stars come out. The prisoner's still resting, but someone's given him a slice of cornbread. You nod at him again before crawling under your blanket. The ground is hard. Your muscles ache. But for the first time in days, you sleep. No dreams, no fire, no screams, just sleep. The first thing you feel the next morning is the cold. Not just a chill, not the usual damp sock misery. This is deep bone cold, the kind that seems to rise up from the earth and crawl into your spine before your eyes even open. Your breath fogs in front of you as you sit up and immediately regret every choice that led to sleeping on the actual ground in November. Someone near the fire mutters, "We're in for frostbite tonight." You believe them. Your fingers are already numb, and your boots feel like they've been dipped in icy soup. You stretch, creak, groan, and look around. Everything's still. Too still. The trees drip in silence. The smoke from the cooking fire rises straight into the pale sky, and even the birds seem to be holding their breath. It's the afterward. That eerie pause that comes after the skirmishes but before the next march. A place where time flattens. You're not going anywhere just yet and no one's shooting at you. That should feel like a gift. Instead, it feels like standing in a hallway with a door creaking open at the far end. You wander over to the makeshift kitchen, hoping to barter for extra coffee grounds. Ellis has beaten you there, of course. He's already leaning against the supply wagon like a man who owns the place, sipping something dark and hot from his tin cup. "Any left for the weak and shivering?" you ask. He raises an eyebrow. "Only if you promise not to cry into it." You don't, but you also don't argue when he passes you the cup. It's strong enough to strip paint, and you're certain there are ground-up twigs in it, but it's warm and vaguely coffee-shaped, so you sip and nod in thanks. After breakfast, the camp gets its orders. Bury the dead. 2 Union men from yesterday's fight didn't survive their wounds. One died quietly in the night. The other bled out before the surgeon even had a chance to do much more than look grim and open his whiskey bottle. You're not told to dig their graves, but you watch from a distance. A couple of men work in silence, shoveling cold earth beside a little grove of pine trees. The graves aren't deep. There's no coffin, just a wrapped blanket, a few whispered words, and a wooden plank carved with initials. It hits differently than the chaotic rush of combat. This is slow, final, personal. And then there's the smell. It creeps in around midday, sour and iron sweet, heavy in the air like the breath of a furnace that's gone bad. It doesn't take long to find the source. A bloated Confederate body left just off the skirmish line, half covered in leaves. Somehow everyone missed him during the initial sweep. He's not the first corpse you've seen, but he's the first to rot near your bedroll. A burial detail is formed. You're not on it, but Myron is. He comes back half an hour later, pale and quiet, muttering something about rats and teeth. You don't ask for details. You don't want them. Here's a historical fact for you. The smell of death was everywhere in Civil War camps and battlefields. Decomposition set in quickly, especially in summer, but even in cooler weather, bodies weren't always buried right away. Some lay in the open for days. Medical staff were overwhelmed, burial crews undermanned. It was the smell that made many soldiers write home about death, more than the bullets ever did. You hear stories throughout the day. One soldier swears he once saw a group of Confederates using a dead mule as a barricade. Another claims he saw a surgeon smoking while sawing off a man's arm. Someone else says he watched a corpse sit up and sneeze before toppling back over, which earns him a round of skeptical groans. Still, death gets into your clothes. Not literally, but it feels that way. It clings to your coat, rides on your breath, lingers under your fingernails even when there's nothing visible left to clean. By late afternoon, the air has shifted again. Colder, sure, but also clearer, like the sky's trying to apologise for what the ground's been doing lately. The fire crackles brighter. Someone manages to trade for a small onion and a turnip, which the cook immediately adds to the pot. You're all suddenly in love with vegetables. Then someone pulls out a letter from home and reads it aloud. It's from a brother talking about a new baby, the harvest coming in late, and a neighbour's barn dance that ended in a fistfight over someone's borrowed mule. You laugh, a little too loudly. These letters are weirdly precious, even when they're not yours. They're like time machines. For a few minutes, you get to pretend you're back home too. Back where life is still marked by harvests and dances and mule-related fistfights. But here's a fringe fact. Mail often took weeks or months to arrive, and soldiers would sometimes receive letters out of order, or not at all. One man famously got a stack of 17 letters in a single day after 6 months of nothing. He sat down, read them all, then cried for 2 hours and passed out in a firewood pile. You kind of get it. You write a letter too. Not because you have anything new to say, but because writing home feels like proof you still exist. You describe the cold, the weird turnip stew, the way Ellis tried to train a squirrel to fetch pebbles. You leave out the bodies, and here's your scholarly debate for the day. How did soldiers process death on a daily basis? Some historians argue they became numb, compartmentalizing loss until it became background noise. Others believe the sheer volume of grief broke men in slow, quiet ways that didn't show until long after the war ended. Both views have merit. From where you're sitting, the truth feels somewhere in the middle. You haven't gone numb, not yet, but you have become adaptable. You still feel the grief, but it doesn't freeze you anymore. You feel it, acknowledge it, and then tie your boots a little tighter. That night the fire is warm, the stew is tolerable, and the harmonica is back. Myron plays a sad tune that no one knows, but everyone hums along. It fits. The prisoner is still with you. He's been moved closer to the fire, his wounds healing. Someone gave him a spare coat. He hasn't spoken much, but when you glance his way, he's watching the fire. Not planning anything, just watching. You wonder what he's thinking. Probably the same thing you are. When does this end? You crawl under your blanket, now stiff with dirt and days of sweat, and pull it up to your chin. Your breath clouds above your face. Tomorrow you move again. Tomorrow there might be more skirmishes, more marching, more letters, more losses, and maybe, if you're lucky, more coffee. You wake to the sound of 2 men arguing over tobacco. It's still early, sun barely up, camp half asleep, but these 2 are going at it like it's a full-blown court case. One's claiming he traded a button and a slice of cornbread for a plug of chewing tobacco. The other says he only agreed to a sniff, not a share. The whole thing is absurd. The kind of fight only war can justify. You pull your blanket over your face and try to block it out, but the cold forces you upright. Another day, another layer of grime on your coat, another knot in your shoulder. Today, though, is different. After breakfast, boiled flour and more of that salt pork that could double as roofing material, you're ordered into formation. You shuffle in with the others, waiting for the same old routine. But instead of the usual drill sergeant barking about posture and bayonets, it's an officer from another regiment who addresses you. Fresh uniform, clean boots, trimmed beard, a visitor. You learn quickly. Your company's being temporarily reassigned, escort duty during a ceasefire. There's a town nearby, neutral for the moment, caught between Union and Confederate control. Supplies need moving, and a temporary truce has been arranged so both sides can operate in the same area without shooting each other's faces off. You and a few others are chosen to walk into town to help coordinate. You're skeptical. Truces in this war don't exactly inspire confidence, but you're curious too. And just like that, after weeks in mud, woods and blood-streaked fields, you find yourself marching, cleaner than usual, weapon slung over your shoulder but uncocked, toward a quiet southern town where, for a brief moment, nobody's actively trying to kill you. The town is small. A few dozen houses, a dusty main street, a church that's seen better days, and a row of shuttered storefronts with cracked windows. Civilians linger in doorways, staring as you pass, not angry, just hollow. like people who've seen too much and are trying to remember how to care. You see a girl, maybe 12, carrying a bucket of water from a well. She stares at your blue coat and doesn't blink. You raise a hand to wave. She doesn't wave back. Inside the town square, a line has been drawn, literally. Chalk marks across the dirt dividing Union from Confederate space. And on the other side of that line, Confederate soldiers, real ones, not just blurs in the trees, not just targets behind musket smoke, but men. Sitting, standing, smoking just like you. Their coats are grey, or what's left of them. Some wear blankets instead. They look thin, tired, like you. And then, the strangest thing happens. Someone tosses a plug of tobacco across the line. One of the rebels catches it, bites off a chunk and nods. No words, just that nod. You look around. A few men are doing the same, trading small things, coffee for tobacco, buttons for biscuits, even a Union cap for a Confederate one, swapped with a laugh and a slap on the back. It's completely against regulations, and nobody's stopping it. Because this war, as brutal as it is, has moments of bizarre humanity. Informal truces, exchanges, silent agreements between exhausted men who've realised they have more in common than the men who sent them here. You end up sitting near the line, resting your feet and talking with a Confederate soldier named Tom. He's from Georgia, used to be a carpenter. He has a wife and 3 kids back home. One of them is named Elijah, just like your brother. You don't talk about politics, you don't mention slavery, or Lincoln, or battles, just food, home, weather, safe topics. You're both careful not to humanize each other too much, but the moment is real. He offers you a piece of jerky, you offer him a sip of coffee, no one shoots anyone. Here's your historical moment. These kinds of ceasefires really happened. Sometimes they were officially arranged for prisoner exchanges or burials. Sometimes they were unofficial, like during picket duty, where men on opposite sides would stop shooting and start shouting jokes across rivers. In one case, Union and Confederate soldiers even fished together during a lull in the fighting. Just stood on opposite banks, casting lines in silence. And now for the fringe detail. During one such informal truce, a soldier from the 17th Michigan recorded that 2 enemy drummers swapped hats and played each other's instruments for hours. Like some kind of bizarre musical exchange program in the middle of a war. That's the Civil War for you. One moment you're bayoneting hay dummies. The next, you're borrowing harmonicas from the enemy. Back in camp, that truce lingers in your thoughts. You tell the others about Tom, about the jerky, about how his youngest was born the same month your brother enlisted. Myron listens, chewing slowly, then shrugs. Guess folks are folks, even in grey. Ellis grunts. Just means it's a damn shame we got to keep shooting 'em. He's not wrong. There's an open question here, and even now scholars don't agree. Did these small acts of kindness prolong the war, or preserve soldiers' humanity? Some argue that seeing the enemy as a person made soldiers hesitate, less likely to fight hard or follow brutal orders. Others say it was the only thing that kept men from breaking completely. That empathy, even brief and forbidden, was survival. You don't know the answer, but you know this. You'll probably never see Tom again. And if you do, it won't be across a chalk line in a peaceful square. It'll be through smoke, at the wrong end of a musket. That night, camp is quiet. The cook actually manages a decent pot of stew, and someone finds a cracked deck of playing cards. You lose 3 rounds of poker and gain a pine cone someone insisted was a lucky token. You don't feel lucky. You feel hollowed out, like the day took something from you, not through violence but through recognition. You lie under the stars, the cold creeping into your coat. You watch your breath curl up and vanish. And you wonder, if this war is about brother against brother, then what does that make you and Tom? You knew the road south would get rough, but you didn't know it would eat your soul through your feet. The march starts at dawn and doesn't stop. Not after 5 miles, not after 10. You pass fields that haven't seen a plough in years, forests burnt black from earlier campaigns, and fences torn down to feed someone else's cook fire. The trees look tired. The roads are worse, mud ruts deep enough to swallow boots whole. Your pack sags. Your rifle digs into your shoulder. Your socks, once lovingly boiled by Ellis, are now so soaked they squish with every step, making a sound like a dying frog. After 2 hours, someone loses a boot to the mud and keeps walking with 1 foot bare. The joke starts immediately. 1 foot in the war, 1 foot in retirement. By mile 4, it's not funny anymore. Welcome to campaigning Civil War style. The glamour? Gone. This isn't battlefield heroics. This is survival in the dullest, most miserable form. You're not charging, you're trudging. And every step is a negotiation between pain and progress. A few miles in, your company crosses a flooded ditch using an improvised bridge. A rotting plank someone swears was once a church pew. Ellis nearly falls in, and swears he felt something move in the water. Myron claims it was a cursed catfish. No one argues. The South is weird like that. There's a superstition going around that every time someone trips during a march, it means a battle is coming. That might just be something someone made up to justify how often you're all face-planting in the mud, but the rumour sticks. You make a mental note of how many men fall today. By lunch, the number's 11. So yeah, bad omen. You finally stop for a meal near a ravine filled with broken trees and brambles. There's no fire, too wet for kindling, so lunch is cold hardtack and whatever jerky someone's willing to share. Your teeth have learned to fear hardtack. You don't chew it so much as strategically weaken it over time. Someone near you taps a biscuit against their rifle barrel, it echoes. But hey, quirky fact break. Did you know some soldiers soaked hardtack in coffee just to make it chewable? Others smashed it with rifle butts, or softened it with grease. One guy claimed to use his as a pillow until it softened up. You don't know whether to be impressed or horrified. You barely have time to eat before it's back on the road. The officer in charge is in a hurry. No one knows why. Rumours fly. Lee's army is moving. No, we're circling to flank 'em. I heard we're heading to support Grant. I heard we're just lost and too proud to admit it. You pick your favourite, probably the lost one, and keep walking. Your boots start betraying you around hour 6. First the left heel gives up and folds inward like a failed pastry. Then the sole on the right starts flapping. Every step sounds like you're trying to sneak up on a goose, Ellis notices. You need new boots or a miracle, he mutters. I'll take whichever gets here first, you reply, and he hands you a strip of canvas to wrap around your foot. You pass the time with word games, half-remembered songs, and debates over whether it's worse to march through mud or snow. Everyone agrees. Snow stings, but mud steals. Here's your historical hit. During the Civil War, marching wasn't just tough, it was a logistical nightmare. Armies moved slowly, roads turned to swamps, horses died by the thousands from exhaustion, and soldiers routinely lost toenails, boots, and occasionally their will to live. Some regiments were called foot cavalry because they marched so hard and fast, they made mounted units look lazy. Sherman's men during the march to the sea? Machines. You? You're more like a machine held together with string and defiance. By late afternoon, your company stumbles into an abandoned plantation. Cracked windows, collapsed barn, no animals in sight. You're allowed to rest for a bit. Some men scavenge, find a couple onions and a chicken that must have escaped the last looters. The cook goes wide-eyed with excitement. Someone builds a fire. Socks are peeled off and strung up like surrender flags. Blisters are inspected like battlefield wounds. Myron's right foot looks like a potato that got into a fight and lost. He names it General Blister and insists it outranks him now. Ellis, ever the innovator, boils another sock. Not to clean it this time, just to dry it faster. You think about writing a letter, but your hands are shaking from the cold and the ache, so you just sit, eyes half closed, watching the fire. Then, just when you think you've earned a full night's rest, word spreads. Scouts saw movement near the ridge. Not definite, just a possibility. But the officers don't like possibilities. You're told to prep your gear, but not for battle, for a night march. Nothing says morale like being told to walk again after 10 hours of walking. And here's the scholarly debate of the day. Did constant marching wear soldiers down, or toughen them up? Some historians argue that relentless movement broke spirits and bodies. Others suggest it forged them into hardened survivors who could handle anything. You're leaning toward the broken spirit camp right now, but check back after some sleep. Except sleep's not happening. You set out again after sundown, walking by the light of lanterns and a crooked moon. The mud's cold, the air colder, and your thoughts start to drift somewhere between dreams and delirium. You hallucinate a barn. You hallucinate your mother. You hallucinate a fully dry pair of socks and cry a little. Eventually, at what must be midnight, you stop. No tents, no fire, just collapse. You lie back in the grass, face tilted to the sky. The stars blur, your breath fogs, your boots whisper their last threats, and you think, not for the first time, you're not going to die in a glorious charge. You're going to die from blisters and beans, and you wake up to a boot in your ribs. Again, This is becoming a theme, but this time it's not some cranky sergeant or Ellis trying to pass off old coffee grounds as breakfast. This time it's one of the junior officers, and he's whispering your name with an urgency that cuts right through your fog of exhaustion. Up! Now! You're on the list! You blink. The list? He nods. For the patrol. We need volunteers. You squint. So, not really volunteers then. Nope. You groan and sit up, every joint in your body throwing a small bitter tantrum. You're still half wrapped in your blanket, which is damp from the dew and smells like suffering. You peel it off and reach for your gear, moving on instinct. Rifle, ammo, boots that you're pretty sure now qualify as museum pieces. You and 9 others are pulled aside and quietly briefed. There's a Confederate unit nearby, at least that's what the scouts think. Not a full regiment, more like a raiding party. Cavalry, maybe. Supplies have gone missing, horses too. Your job, scout ahead, confirm movement, don't engage unless forced, which is code for, go stick your face in a hornet's nest and hope it's empty. You're paired up with Myron, who looks as thrilled as you feel. Why is it always us, he mutters, cinching his belt tight. I swear, some officer saw me trip once and decided I was expendable. Ellis walks past, smirking. Try not to get shot, I'm not carrying your corpse. You flip him off gently, which is probably the most affection you've shown him all week. Then you head out. The sun's just starting to rise, casting gold light through the trees like some kind of divine practical joke. It would be beautiful if you weren't creeping through it with a musket in your hands, trying not to breathe too loudly. You move quietly, sort of. Branches snap underfoot, birds scatter, and somewhere to your right someone sneezes and immediately gets smacked by the guy behind him. After about a mile of slow, deliberate marching, you find something. A saddle, empty, lying in the middle of the road. It's not old. The leather's still supple, the strap's intact. There's even a little mud clinging to the underside that matches your boots, which means whoever left it has probably been walking this same miserable path. Then you spot the tracks, horse hooves, at least half a dozen, heading east toward the creek. You signal with your hand, flat palm, downward motion. The line halts. Myron creeps up beside you. Cavalry, he whispers. Scouting or foraging? You nod. Then the wind shifts and you smell it, smoke. Not the good kind. Not pine or hickory. This is greasy and bitter, the kind that sticks in your throat. Someone's burning something. Recently. You follow the tracks, keeping low, hearts collectively pounding in your ears, and then you see it. A farmhouse. What's left of one, anyway. The roof's gone. The walls are scorched. The barn's collapsed into a pile of ash and splinters. The smoke's coming from a smouldering heap near what used to be a chicken coop. There are no chickens. There are, however, 3 Confederates visible through the trees, rifles slung, lazily picking through the wreckage. One's eating something. The other 2 are laughing about something you can't hear. It's surreal. They don't look like monsters. They look like you. Ragged uniforms, mud-caked boots, faces tired beyond reason. You could fire. You have the shot. But the lieutenant in charge signals to fall back. The risk isn't worth it. Not yet. You're to report this, regroup, maybe come back with numbers. You move like ghosts through the woods. Quiet. Controlled. The tension in your muscles doesn't release until the farmhouse is completely out of sight. On the way back, Myron finally exhales. Thought for sure they'd spot us. That one had a beard so long I swear it waved at me. You smile weakly, but inside your stomach is churning. Because it hits you. If the roles were reversed, if you were short on supplies, stuck behind enemy lines, half-starved, you'd be doing exactly the same thing. Burning farms, stealing livestock, trying to stay alive. It's a terrible, dangerous thought. One that creeps under your skin and settles in. You report the sighting to Captain Willis, who doesn't flinch. Burned it, huh? He mutters. Means they're out of food. They'll keep moving. We'll let 'em. No retaliation, no follow-up. Just a line drawn on a map and the war moves on. That evening, back in camp, someone tells a story about a Confederate soldier who surrendered just to get food. Walked right into Union lines waving a rag, sat down, and asked for a biscuit. Said he hadn't eaten in 3 days. The commander fed him, then let him go. You ask, why'd he let him go? Ellis shrugs. Maybe he looked like his brother. Here's your historical moment for the night. Hunger shaped this war. It wasn't just bullets and bayonets, it was stomachs. Confederate troops often went days without proper meals, living off parched corn, spoiled meat, or nothing at all. Raiding wasn't a strategy, it was survival. The Union had better supply lines, but even then, you've eaten enough boot-soggy beans to know better doesn't mean good. And here's the fringe fact. In 1864, a group of starving Confederates in Tennessee surrendered an entire battery to Union forces in exchange for food. No fight, just hunger. That's the part people skip in war stories. The empty belly, the slow rot from the inside. As night falls, you sit near the fire, boots off, watching steam rise from your damp socks. Someone is carving a small wooden horse. Someone else is trying to teach Myron how to whistle through his fingers. He's terrible at it. It's beautiful. You write a letter. This one's short. You don't say much about the burned farm or the patrol. You just ask for news. Tell your family you're okay. Ask how the dog is doing. Ask if the apple trees bore fruit this year. You don't mention the smoke still clinging to your coat, or the fact that it's starting to feel normal. And here's your scholarly debate. At what point do soldiers stop seeing the enemy as other? Some say it never happens. That hate becomes part of the uniform. Others argue that the longer the war drags on, the more you see yourself reflected in the man across the line. You don't know where you stand yet, but you're starting to suspect that war is just a long, slow mirror, one you can't look away from. You roll up in your blanket, feet freezing, stomach growling. The fire's burned low. The stars above look distant and uncaring. And in the silence before sleep you ask yourself, how far would I go if it meant one more day alive? You don't get much sleep. Not that anyone expects to anymore. Sleep in the army is more of a suggestion than a requirement. Something you attempt between shouting sergeants, groaning stomachs, and someone farting so aggressively it sets off half the picket line. But this night is worse. You wake up with the unmistakable feeling of being watched. You sit up, blink hard, and scan the tree line. Nothing. Just moonlight, shadows, and the soft hush of wind through wet grass. Then you hear it. A rustle, a branch snapping, a muffled curse. Your hand moves to your rifle instinctively, but the challenge call goes out first. Who goes there? No answer. The second time it's louder, more urgent. Advance and be recognized. Still nothing. You hear scrambling, then boots slapping through mud, and suddenly the picket line explodes with movement. Lanterns blaze, voices shout. You're on your feet, heart racing, rifle half loaded, and no idea what's happening. Then comes the report. Prisoners escaped. The camp is thrown into chaos. There weren't many prisoners, just a handful from various skirmishes, but a couple slipped their ropes during the night, slipped past a half-dozing guard, and disappeared into the woods. You and 6 others are ordered to pursue. Just like that, you're off. No breakfast, no clean socks, just a musket, 2 pieces of hardtack in your pocket, and a burning sense of dread. Let's be clear, you're not a bounty hunter. You're 19, sleep-deprived, sore, and half convinced you hallucinated most of yesterday. But orders are orders, so you follow tracks through the forest as the sun rises. The group splits. You're with Myron again, naturally. He grumbles the whole way. Chasing ghosts through the woods, he mutters, squinting through the branches. Gonna get bit by a snake or shot by a rabbit. After an hour, the trail splits. There's a scuffed patch in the dirt, a broken branch, a bit of fabric snagged on a bramble. You choose left, which turns out to be the wrong choice. You and Myron follow the trail deeper into a gully, thick with vines, the ground slick with wet leaves. Every step is a gamble. At one point you nearly fall face first into what turns out to be a very startled raccoon. It hisses. You apologize. War is weird. And then, just as you're about to turn back, you see him. One of the escaped Confederates, barefoot, dirty, leaning against a tree like he's about to fall over. You freeze. So does he. Your rifle's in your hands, but not aimed. His hands are up. No gun, he says. His voice is hoarse. Ain't armed. You don't move. You're too stunned. He looks like he's your age. Maybe younger. His face is sunken, eyes wide and scared. His coat is shredded. You can see a bloodstain on his thigh, already dark. I just wanted to go home, he says quietly. Then Myron steps forward, rifle raised, expression unreadable, and the next 60 seconds might be the longest of your life. You've been trained for this, technically. The manual says prisoners must be returned if possible, but it also says use discretion, and that's a fancy way of saying, if he runs, shoot him. If he threatens you, shoot him. If it's dark and you're scared, shoot him. But this kid isn't running. He's not threatening anything, he's barely standing, so you make the call. We're not going to shoot you, you say, but you're coming with us. He nods once and slides down the tree, breathing like he's just exhaled a whole week of fear. Myron lowers his rifle reluctantly. You fashion a makeshift stretcher from 2 poles and a blanket. It's awful. It creaks. It groans. But it works. You carry him back to camp 1 step at a time. When you get there, the captain doesn't ask questions. He glances at the kid, sees the wound, and waves the medic over. Just like that, it's done. No punishment, no reward, just another line in a report. Here's your historical fact. More than 400,000 soldiers were taken prisoner during the Civil War. Some were exchanged, many weren't. Conditions in prison camps, on both sides, were brutal. Overcrowded, disease-ridden, short on food. And for those who escaped, the woods became their battlefield. Union and Confederate alike hunted runaways through forests and swamps. Sometimes they made it, sometimes they didn't. And here's a twisted little fringe fact. Some soldiers faked being prisoners to get better treatment. They'd toss their rifles, raise their hands, and hope for food and a dry place to sleep. More than one was caught trying this trick more than once. War turned survival into creativity. After you drop off the wounded boy, you collapse under a tree and stare up at the sky. You think he'll live? Myron asks. You shrug. Maybe. Myron pulls off his boot and dumps out a small pond. Hope so. Hate to think I carried him for nothing. You don't say what you're really thinking. That it felt good to help someone. That maybe, just for a second, you weren't just a cog in a machine designed to chew up young men. That maybe you did something human. That evening, Ellis brings you a chunk of bread someone swiped from a supply wagon. It's stale, but you eat it like it's cake. You write another letter. You don't say anything about the escape, the woods, or the prisoner. Just that the march continues. The sky was clear today, and the coffee still tastes like pond water. There's no fire that night. Too risky, with movement nearby. So you all huddle in your blankets, listening to the wind rustle through the tents, and the low groan of tired men trying to find sleep.
Yeah.
And here's the debate you mull over as the stars come out. What does mercy mean in war? Was letting that boy live an act of defiance, of weakness, of strength? You don't know. But you're glad you didn't pull the trigger? You drift off, not to dreams, but to silence. And for once, that's enough. You wake up to rain, not the good kind, not a lazy drizzle or gentle mist that makes the leaves shine and the mud just sort of exist. No, this is war rain. Cold, relentless, vertical misery pouring from a sky that hates you personally. The kind of rain that finds the hole in your boot, the tear in your coat, the one spot on your back your blanket doesn't cover. Every drop seems specifically calibrated to soak you more. You're not even up yet and your socks feel like they've been boiled in ditch water. And of course the order comes down. Pack it up, we're moving. The words hang in the air like a cruel joke, but no one laughs. You pack in silence, pulling on your damp uniform, rolling up your wet blanket like it's a soggy burrito of sadness, and strapping it all to your back with fingers that already feel frozen. Breakfast is a piece of hardtack you dropped in the mud and decided to eat anyway. You wipe it off on your sleeve and pretend that counts as sanitation. Then you march, and this time, it's different. This isn't a patrol. This isn't a scout detail or some strategic shuffle through nowhere. You're being folded into a major campaign, an actual full-scale offensive. Rumours fly fast and loud. Some say it's a push toward Richmond. Others whisper about Chattanooga or a flanking manoeuvre to cut off Lee's supply line. A few think it's just about morale, some grand movement to make the public back home feel like something's happening. But all you know is this. You're finally part of something big. The road is a sludgy nightmare. Your boots disappear up to the ankle in some spots. Wagons get stuck every 100 yards. You pass horses that look like they've given up on being horses. One lies dead in a ditch and someone's already started cutting the hide off its flanks. You try not to look. By midday, your coat weighs twice what it did this morning. Your shoulders ache. Your hip bruises from the bounce of your cartridge box. And you've now started rating every puddle on a personal scale of gross to I think that one blinked at me. Ellis grumbles beside you, coat tied around his head like a makeshift hood. Marching through soup. We're going to drown in dirt before we see a single rebel. Myron mutters, I think I swallowed a worm. Or it swallowed me. You press forward, step by squelching step. Here's your historical nugget. The Union Army of the Potomac and others like it often moved thousands of men across terrain like this for days at a time. No trains, no reliable roads, just boots, wheels, and willpower. Some campaigns were lost not in battle but in the mud. Rain could delay entire offensives. It's one of those details you never see in paintings, but it decided the war just as much as any general. Around dusk, you finally stop. Not in a proper camp, just a hillside off the road where the wagons can breathe and the men can collapse. Tents are set up at weird angles. Fires sputter in wet pits. One guy wraps himself in a saddle blanket and lies in the grass like a burrito of despair. And that's when it hits you. This is it. This is the big time. Officers you've never seen before start showing up. Brass buttons, shiny swords, horses that don't even look muddy. They gather in a tent near the centre of the hill, talking in tight voices over a map that's already smudged from rain. You and the others eat whatever the cook can scrape together. A stew made of beans, questionable meat, and something that tastes faintly like disappointment. You eat it anyway. You don't ask questions anymore. Then you're assigned to picket duty. Because of course you are. You pull on what's left of your dry gear, load your rifle again, and head out with a few others to watch the tree line. No talking, just listening. Rain dripping through branches, distant rustles, a branch snapping in the wind that still makes your heart stop for a beat. And here's the weird part. You almost feel ready. You know how to load your weapon blindfolded. You know what a mini ball does to a man. You know what fear smells like, how blood dries, how fast someone can die. You know who to trust. You know who panics. You've been through enough now that when someone says they might attack before dawn, you don't freeze. You just nod. You find your post under a pine tree and stare into the night. Then the whispers begin. Not in the trees, among your own men. A quiet ripple moving down the picket line. Where it is, we're facing Hood's men. Hood? Thought he was still licking his wounds down south. Nope, he's moving up. Vicksburg fell. Chickamauga's a mess. Grant's pushing. They're getting desperate. You don't know if it's true, but it makes sense. And if it is Hood's men coming, you'd better be ready. Because those guys, they're mean, hardened, veterans of a dozen battles, a mix of rage, desperation, and stubbornness. You remember something from back in camp. A grizzled sergeant muttering, "A hungry army is a dangerous army." You think you finally understand what he meant. The rain tapers off near midnight. The air is colder now, sharp and metallic. You hold your rifle close and try not to shiver. And now, here's your fringe fact. Some Civil War soldiers swore that right before a battle they could feel it. Not hear, not see, feel. Like the air changed, like the earth braced itself. One soldier from Illinois wrote in his journal that, "The night before Shiloh, the frogs stopped croaking. And I knew we'd bleed come morning. You can't say the frogs have stopped, but the silence. It's wrong. You hunker down, boots in the mud, eyes wide, and here's your scholarly debate to ponder through the long night. Do soldiers become braver, or just better at pretending? Some say courage is earned through experience. Others say it's just fear worn thin. After enough nights like this, enough cold dawns and long marches, maybe bravery is just what's left when you've run out of other options. Either way, you're still here, still breathing, still gripping a rifle and staring into the dark, wondering if you'll be alive to see breakfast. Dawn breaks in the worst way quiet. No birdsong, no idle chatter, no clank of canteens or griping from Ellis about the beans situation. Just the soft shuffle of boots in wet grass and the heavy stillness that presses against your chest like a hand. It's the kind of silence that feels loud, and you've lived in war long enough now to know this is battle silence. The world doesn't get this still unless something's about to shatter it. You're pulled back to camp just after first light. Captain Willis is waiting. His face is tight, jaw clenched like he's chewing nails. There's a rusted bloodstain on his sleeve. Old, probably, but somehow you only notice it now. He gathers your company with a sharp nod. "Orders just came in," he says. "We're moving in on the left flank, supporting the main push through the cornfield." You blink. "The cornfield?" "Yep, that one. You're at Antietam, and it doesn't register at first. The name sounds small, quiet, like a sleepy town with a sleepy church and sleepy fields full of sleepy corn. But then someone mutters it under their breath. Just the one word, and suddenly everyone's awake. Antietam. Even now, in your soggy socks and stiff coat, you know the stories. You've heard them whispered in camps, barked in briefings. You remember Ellis saying, "When it comes, it'll come hard, fast, Antietam style." And now you're here, September 17th, 1862. That date won't mean anything to you today, not yet. But later, it will haunt you. It'll be carved into your bones, muttered in your dreams, burned into the calluses on your fingers. Because this isn't just another battle. This is the bloodiest single day in American history. And you get a front row seat. You march out with your company in loose formation, boots squelching, rifles slung, rations forgotten. The sun is barely up, its light pale and hazy. Fog clings to the low ground, seeping between trees and fences like ghost breath. You pass the cornfield before the real shooting starts. It's tall, dense, green-tinged with yellow. At first glance it looks harmless, like the kind of place you'd get lost in as a kid, chasing frogs or fireflies. But you're not chasing anything now. You're being herded. Your company forms up on the edge of the field. Other units pour in beside you. Hundreds of men in blue. Officers bark orders like they're trying to beat back the nerves through sheer volume. Somewhere up ahead, cannons boom. The ground trembles beneath your boots. You're told to advance into the corn. It's like walking into another world. The stalks tower over you, tall as a man, whispering as they brush against your coat. You can't see more than a few feet in any direction. The light's weird too, dappled, flickering. Feels like you're moving through a dream. Then the dream ends. The first volley slams into your left flank. Bullets cut through corn and flesh with the same vicious ease. A man screams, another drops without a sound. Someone in front of you vanishes into the stalks like he was never there. You hit the ground instinctively. It's muddy, sticky, smells like iron and sweat. You fumble for your cartridge, biting the end off with trembling teeth. Your hands shake, powder spills, but you load. You fire, you don't aim. You just point and hope. The noise is unreal. Muskets cracking, cannons thudding, men shouting, men dying. The cornfield becomes a meat grinder. Your formation dissolves. Officers scream over the gunfire to rally the line, but there is no line anymore. Just clusters of terrified men firing blindly into a field that now smells like blood and black powder. Here's your historical fact. The cornfield at Antietam became one of the war's most horrific battle zones. The fighting here changed hands more than a dozen times. Union advances, Confederate pushes, back and forth, like the earth couldn't decide which side deserved to hold it. Thousands died in these rows. And here's your fringe fact. Later that day, reporters walking the field found so many bodies piled together, they thought they were haystacks. But it wasn't hay, it was men. You fire again, and again. You don't count, you don't blink. At one point, a body falls across your legs and you shove it off without thinking. You're numb now. Myron's still alive beside you. He's bleeding from the ear, but firing steady. Ellis, you haven't seen him in 10 minutes. Then you hear it. A bugle, not yours. Confederate reinforcements. Another volley rips through the corn. A man in front of you catches a mini ball in the neck. He goes down gurgling. You step over him because there's nowhere else to step. Your officer shouts, "Fall back!" You don't need to be told twice. You and what's left of your unit scramble back through the corn, slipping in blood, in mud, in things you don't dare look at. You fire over your shoulder as you run, half to cover yourself, half to convince the enemy you're still fighting. Once you're clear of the field, you collapse behind a stone wall. You're gasping. Your hands are shaking. Your rifle's hot. Your ears are ringing so loud you can't hear anything but your own breath. Then someone yells for a medic. You look down. You've been shot. Small hole, high on your arm, just above the elbow. It didn't feel like anything. Just pressure. Heat. Now it stings like fire. Blood soaks your sleeve. Myron tears a strip from his shirt and wraps it fast, swearing under his breath the whole time. "You'll live," he says. "Probably." The battle rages on. You're ordered to hold position behind the wall. You reload one-handed. You watch wave after wave of men surge into the cornfield, then stagger back out. Some never come out at all. You see Ellis eventually. His coat's torn, face black with soot. He's limping, but alive. He nods when he sees you. That's enough. You fire again, even though your arm throbs. You reload again, even though your fingers feel like glass. You don't think. You don't cry. You just survive. That's all you can do. By nightfall, it's over. Not won, not lost, just over. Both sides pull back. Neither claims victory. The field is left behind, full of bodies, broken muskets, and corn stained red. The number floats through the camp like a ghost. 22,717 casualties, more than 3,600 dead in one day. And here's your scholarly debate. Was Antietam worth it? Some say it gave Lincoln the victory he needed to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. Others say it was a draw, a missed opportunity, a horror show that changed nothing. You don't know, you just know your arm hurts, your ears ring, and tonight, for the first time in this war, you saw what hell really looks like. It looks like a cornfield at dawn. The morning after Antietam is quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of quiet that settles over a place when it runs out of sounds. The wind doesn't blow, birds don't sing, the world just sits still, as if even nature is too stunned to speak. You wake up stiff, damp, and aching from your shoulder to your fingertips. The bandage Myron tied around your arm is soaked through, tinged with a dark brown that was probably bright red yesterday. Your coat sticks to it. When you peel it away, you hiss through your teeth. The pain is real now, hot, sharp, unrelenting, but you're lucky. That much is obvious. All around you, men are limping, missing fingers, bandaged heads. Someone from Company B is crying softly, rocking back and forth with his arms around his knees. No one interrupts. No one mocks him. We all cry eventually. You sit up slowly, cradle your arm, and stare into the grey morning. The field's not far. You can still smell it. The acrid sting of gunpowder, the sickly sweet rot of death. The corn is gone, flattened into mud and bodies. A few crows circle lazily overhead, waiting for permission to descend. You close your eyes and try not to remember, but it's impossible. The sound of muskets cracking like thunder, the wet snap of a mini-ball hitting flesh, the man in front of you who dropped mid-step and never got back up. You feel like you aged a decade in that cornfield. You probably did. Today is supposed to be about rest, recovery, re-enlistment. You blink. Re-enlistment? Yep. Words going around. For some of you, your initial service term is up. Your 3-month or 6-month enlistment, depending on when you were mustered in, has run its course. You can technically go home. You and a few others gather near the edge of camp, watching as Captain Willis reads off names and hands out options. Stay and fight, or leave with honour. No shame either way, he says, though his eyes say otherwise. When your name comes up, you stand. Shoulder aching, hands filthy, boots full of yesterday's mud, and you do something you didn't think you would. You hesitate. The war's a monster, that much is clear. But it's your monster now. These men, this mess, this daily grind of pain and loss and shared hardtack, that's your world. You look at Ellis. He's not leaving. You look at Myron. He's staying too, or you nod once, quietly. You re-enlist, because it's not about duty, or patriotism, or revenge. It's about not leaving your brothers behind. You're not alone in this choice. Most of your company signs on again. A few don't. One guy walks off with his back ramrod straight, his face unreadable. No one stops him. He earned it. And here's your historical footnote. Re-enlistment was a massive issue for both sides. Many Union soldiers signed up for short stints early in the war, thinking it would be over in a few months. When the reality hit, many refused to re-enlist. Others couldn't imagine walking away from their unit, so they stayed, for better or worse. And here's your quirky fact. Some Union soldiers who did re-enlist were given re-enlistment bounties, cash payments, land grants, or extended leave as a reward. But they didn't always get what they were promised. Some officers lost the paperwork, others gambled the bounty money away, because of course they did. By midday you've eaten something vaguely stew-like, changed your bandage badly, and tried to scrape the blood off your trousers with a stick. You've also located Ellis, who's been suspiciously quiet. Turns out he's been writing. Not a letter, not a diary, a will. It's scratched onto the back of a discarded map. He folds it neatly and tucks it into his sock. Just in case, he says. You want to laugh, you don't. Later that afternoon, there's a commotion near the road. You and a few others hobble over to investigate. A wagon has arrived from the north, stacked with medical supplies, fresh uniforms, and packages, mail, letters. You didn't think you'd get one. Honestly, you'd stopped hoping. But the quartermaster calls your name, and your fingers actually tremble as you take the envelope. It's soft at the edges, smudged from its journey. You sit on a rock, hold it to your chest for a second, then read. It's from your mother. She says she misses you, that the dog got into the cellar again, that your sister's growing sunflowers taller than the barn. She includes a small dried flower in the fold. You stare at it for 10 minutes, unable to do anything else. Then you tuck it carefully into your shirt pocket, close to your heart, where it belongs. That night, around the fire, no one sings, no harmonica, no dice games, just silence. You're all tired, not physically, that's constant. You're tired in the bones, in the brain. You've seen too much. Ellis finally breaks it with a story about the time he fell out of a hayloft and landed on a cow. Myron follows with a tale about kissing the mayor's daughter and getting chased with a pitchfork. You tell a story about hiding in the outhouse during a thunderstorm and screaming because you thought God was mad at you. You all laugh, gently, like the sound's been hibernating. And here's the scholarly debate for today. What keeps a soldier from deserting? Fear of punishment? Loyalty to command? Or is it something simpler? Friendship, routine, the slow reshaping of your soul into a person who can't imagine home anymore? You don't have an answer, but you know this. You stayed. You could have walked, but you didn't. That means something, probably. As the fire dies down, you lay back on your bedroll, stare up at the stars and feel the sharp throb of your shoulder, wound with every heartbeat. You're still bleeding, still breathing, and tomorrow, you'll do it all again. You're half asleep when someone shouts, "President's here!" At first, you think it's another one of Myron's morning jokes, like the time he claimed Grant himself was disguised as a mule driver and had been sleeping in the hay cart for 2 weeks. But this time, there's real movement, real energy. You sit up, rubbing your eyes with a grimy sleeve, and hear the words again. Lincoln's here. No maybe. No heard it from a guy. Just flat-out truth. You stand, despite the ache in your bones, the fog in your brain, and the fact that your boots feel fused to your socks. Everyone's moving, straightening coats, wiping soot from faces, kicking one another awake. Ellis spits into his hand and rubs it through his hair like that's going to help. He's really here, you ask? Myron grins. Yup, President Lincoln, Honest Abe, tall as a scarecrow and twice as pale, came to see his boys. You're skeptical. This war has taught you not to trust anything until you can poke it with a stick, but still, you follow the crowd. The camp buzzes like a kicked hornet's nest. Soldiers converge near the edge of the ridge where the ground slopes down into the valley, and sure enough, there he is. Abraham Lincoln, or well, a very tall man on a very tall horse, wearing a stovepipe hat and looking incredibly uncomfortable. From where you're standing, he's mostly a silhouette, backlit by the sun, long coat fluttering in the breeze. You catch glimpses as the crowd shifts, his sharp nose, the deep-set eyes, the tired slump in his shoulders, and the silence that follows him. It's eerie. Hundreds of battle-hardened men standing stock still, just staring. Then someone near the front starts clapping. One slow, steady rhythm. Others join in. And before you know it, the whole crowd is cheering. Not wildly, but respectfully. Like you're all greeting a ghost you weren't sure was real. Lincoln tips his hat. He doesn't give a speech. At least, not a grand one. Just rides slowly along the line of men, nodding, exchanging handshakes when he can reach, speaking softly to wounded soldiers on the outskirts. He says a few words that drift your way. You've done what had to be done. God bless you, son. Home will be proud. And that's it. Short, awkward, honest. But it hits, like a cannonball to the chest, but, in a good way. You realise something as you watch him ride away. Lincoln looks more tired than you, which is saying something. His face is drawn, lines deep enough to hide a bullet in. He doesn't look like the kind of man who sends boys to war easily. He looks like one who remembers every single name. Ellis whispers, "He looks like he hasn't slept since 61. You nod. Probably hasn't. Here's your historical moment. Lincoln really did visit the battlefield at Antietam in October 1862, just days after the carnage. Not for show, but to push General McClellan to act faster, to walk among the troops, to see what this war had become. Photographs were taken. Grim, grainy images of him standing in the carnage, tall hat and all, surrounded by men who'd seen hell. And here's a fringe detail that makes your eyebrows lift. The photographers who captured Lincoln at Antietam also snapped some of the first widely published images of American dead on a battlefield. It shocked the nation. Before that, most people thought of war as noble, distant. Those pictures? They showed bloated corpses, shredded uniforms, twisted limbs. Suddenly, war came home. Back in camp, the mood shifts. There's a strange energy now, not excitement exactly. Something quieter, weightier. Like Lincoln's visit reminded everyone that this isn't just about drills and boots and beans. This war has eyes on it. Myron sits on an overturned crate, rolling a bullet between his fingers. Never thought I'd see the president. Not unless I got shot in the face and woke up in some marble hall. Ellis grunts. Don't let it go to your head. He didn't exactly hug you. But even Ellis seems lighter. You all do. Because even if he didn't say much, Lincoln showed up. And when someone with that much power shows up, it says something. Like maybe the people up top haven't forgotten who's actually doing the bleeding. You go back to camp duties with a little more purpose. You write a letter, maybe your best one yet. You describe the president, the way he looked, how he tipped his hat. You leave out the mud caked into your socks, the way your arm still pulses from the shot at Antietam, and how Ellis keeps muttering about phantom frogs in the latrine trench. Then, because it's still the army, you get pulled for equipment check duty. It's about as glamorous as it sounds. You spend the rest of the afternoon inspecting rifles, boiling water to clean bayonets, and arguing with Myron over whether his musket is just naturally rusty, or if he's been using it as a walking stick again. By evening, the adrenaline of the presidential visit has faded. You're back to basics, drying socks by the fire, poking at rations with a stick to see if the meat is still moving, and watching the sun dip below the horizon like it's trying to hide from what's coming next. Because let's be honest, you all know this war isn't slowing down. Lincoln came because things are about to heat up again. You're headed south soon, probably into Confederate territory. You can feel the shift. The campaign's turning. No more defense, no more chasing. It's time to press, to grind, to end this. And here's your scholarly debate to sit with tonight. Did Lincoln's visit to Antietam really make a difference? Some argue it was symbolic, just a leader boosting morale. Others say it forced McClellan's hand, led directly to the Emancipation Proclamation, and changed the very meaning of the war. After all, freeing the slaves wasn't the official goal until that point. After Antietam, it was. You lie down under your now-worn blanket, head resting on a half-empty knapsack, and think about that. About freedom, about survival, about how history keeps happening around you while you're still trying to wash yesterday's mud off your boots. You close your eyes and whisper something into the night. Don't let it be for nothing. The rumours hit camp before the orders do. Gettysburg. Just the name carries weight, like someone dropped a cannonball into your chest. You hear it whispered during firewood duty, muttered over coffee, scrawled into the margins of pocket Bibles like a warning scratched into a ship's hull. You don't even know where Gettysburg is, not exactly. Pennsylvania, someone says, north of the Mason-Dixon. We're headed home, says another, though nobody smiles when they say it. Not this time, because Gettysburg isn't just another skirmish. You feel it, in your bones, in the way the officers talk in clipped sentences and glance at maps like they're trying to read the future. And sure enough, the orders come down before dawn. Pack up, fall in, march north. You pull on your gear with muscle memory, shirt, coat, cartridge box, bayonet. Your arm still aches from Antietam, but you've learned how to work around it. Pain is just another piece of the uniform now. Ellis grunts as he shoulders his rifle. We marching all the way to Canada next? Myron rolls his eyes. Maybe we'll find a bed that doesn't bite back. The joke falls flat. The march is long. You head north through the green hills of Maryland into Pennsylvania, following a snaking trail of rumours and supplies. The countryside is different up here. Prettier, in a way. Rolling hills, stone fences, tall trees with leaves that don't seem to know a war's coming. It should feel like a return to something familiar, but it doesn't. It feels like walking into a storm. By the time you reach the outskirts of Gettysburg, the thunder has already started. Gunfire echoes in the distance, sharp and sporadic at first, then heavier, like it's finding its rhythm. You smell smoke before you see it, rising over the rooftops like a crooked flag. The air is tense, charged, thick with the scent of coming death. You don't get time to rest. You're moved into position fast, rushed into a defensive posture on the outskirts of town. You're told you'll be support for the right flank, near a place no one had heard of until today, Culp's Hill. You dig shallow trenches, pile rocks, sharpen sticks, anything to give the illusion of control. Then you wait. The first Confederate cannonball lands 100 yards from your position, tearing a fence post in half and sending 3 horses into a dead sprint away from camp. You barely blink. You're getting used to the sound now. That's either experience or trauma. Pick one. The next few hours are a blur. The enemy surges and you respond. Muskets crack. Cannons roar. Men scream. Trees fall. Smoke rises in thick curtains, and suddenly the peaceful Pennsylvania countryside becomes the edge of the world. You don't know what day it is anymore. It all blends together. You fight near the base of the hill. Confederates swarm from the woods in waves, faces streaked with mud and desperation. You fire, reload, fire again, until your fingers blister and your shoulder numbs from recoil. At one point your rifle jams and you almost panic, until Myron slaps it with a rock and clears the blockage with a grin. "Don't die because your gun's a coward," he says. He's only half joking. Here's your historical grounding. The Battle of Gettysburg lasted 3 brutal days, July 1st to 3rd, 1863. It wasn't supposed to happen. Lee's army was foraging, looking for supplies. Union forces collided with them by accident. But once the battle started, neither side could back down. The result? Over 51,000 casualties. And here's your odd little fringe fact. The town of Gettysburg had a population of just 2,400 before the battle. Afterward, it had more dead men than living. Every home became a hospital, every barn a morgue. Civilians emerged from cellars to find corpses stacked like firewood. You survive the first day, barely. You fall back with your unit, dig in near a stone wall and try to rest, but there's no sleeping. Not with the groans drifting from the field. Not with the knowledge that the next wave is coming. And it does. Day 2 is chaos. You're shifted to the centre line near Cemetery Ridge. The Confederates charge over and over again. You fire until your rifle overheats, until your hands are shaking from hunger and your mouth is dry as ash. You see Ellis go down, not from a bullet but from heat. He collapses mid-shot, eyes rolled back. You drag him to cover. Pour your canteen over his head. He sputters, groans, mutters, "Tell my socks I died bravely," and passes out again. By nightfall, you've forgotten how to feel anything but exhausted. Day 3. The name spreads through the line like wildfire. Pickett's charge. You don't know who Pickett is, but you're told to expect everything. You sit behind the stone wall, heart hammering, watching the open field ahead. The air is too still, the birds are gone. Even the trees look like they're bracing themselves. Then you see them. Confederate soldiers, shoulder to shoulder, emerging from the far woods in a long, perfect line. It's beautiful. Terrifying. Like watching a wave rise before it crashes. And then, hell. Your side opens fire. Cannons, rifles, the air shreds around you with noise. The Confederate line breaks, reforms, charges again. You can't hear anything but the scream of artillery and your own heartbeat. Bodies fall like dominoes. The line wavers, pushes forward, then collapses. It's over in less than an hour, but it feels like a lifetime. Afterward, the field is quiet again. You step out from behind the wall, legs trembling, eyes wide. Smoke clings to the ground like a ghost refusing to leave. You walk through what's left of Pickett's men. Some are crawling, some still breathing, most not. You see a boy who looks 14. His hat is still on. His face is clean. He's holding a picture in his hand. You look away. And here's your scholarly debate. Did Gettysburg break the Confederacy? Some argue yes, that it was the high water mark, the point after which Lee could never truly recover. Others say the war dragged on far too long for one battle to matter. But standing here, staring across this field of torn flags and twisted bodies, you think, maybe this really is a turning point. But at what cost? That night, you sit beside Ellis. He's awake now, drinking something warm and pretending he wasn't unconscious for most of the fighting. Myron is quiet, staring into the fire. No one says much, no one needs to. You've survived another one. But Gettysburg stays with you. Long after the smoke fades, long after the bodies are buried, long after your boots finally fall apart. It will haunt you in dreams. And in those dreams the cornfield is gone, the mud is gone, the bullets are silent. But the boy with the photo, he's still looking at you. It's been days since Gettysburg, maybe weeks. You've lost track. Time bends in war. Days stretch out like years when you're marching, and then years collapse into a single heartbeat when the bullets start flying. All you know for sure is that you're alive. Your boots have dried out just enough to start cracking instead of squishing. and your company has just received a new set of orders. You're heading south again, this time toward a town no one in your company has heard of before. Petersburg. Another dot on the map, another place you might die. But before you go, something happens that gives you pause. New faces show up, not replacements, reinforcements. Men with uniforms darker than yours, buttons brighter, boots newer. But that's not what catches your eye. It's the faces. These men are black, soldiers, wearing the same Union blue as you. They march into camp quiet but focused, eyes sharp, rifles shouldered with purpose. Their boots are just as muddy by the time they reach your fire pit. One of them nods at you. You nod back. You're not sure what to say. No one is. These are men of the United States Colored Troops, or USCT, volunteers and freedmen, some former slaves, others born free, now officially enlisted in the Union Army. And for the first time, they're fighting alongside you. Ellis breaks the silence. Well, damn, he mutters. Took 'em long enough to let real men fight. Myron raises an eyebrow. They're going to trust us to fight shoulder to shoulder? You glance at the new arrivals, calm, serious, organised. Honestly, you'd prefer to be flanked by them over some of the wide-eyed farm boys who still forget which end of the musket goes boom. The new regiment sets up camp not far from yours. You hear them singing as they pitch tents, low, rhythmic spirituals that don't quite sound like the marching tunes you're used to. There's power in it, though. Strength wrapped in harmony. You learn that many of them trained at Camp William Penn, that they've been marching longer than you, that some were promised freedom in exchange for service, that some had to fight their way into the army before they ever pointed a gun at the enemy. And now they're here. Alongside you, here's your historical moment. After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the Union began enlisting black soldiers in earnest. Over 180,000 black men would eventually serve in the Union Army, roughly 10% of the total force. They fought in nearly every major battle after mid-1863, often with little training, subpar supplies, and under white officers who didn't always believe in them. But they fought. And here's your fringe fact. During one inspection, a general described a USCT regiment as the cleanest, most precise drillers he'd seen all month. One unit even designed their own uniforms, adding red trim and gold buttons not out of vanity, but because they knew they'd have to fight harder to be seen. In camp, the mingling is slow. Some white soldiers keep their distance, others stare. But a few like you find quiet conversations forming around fires. You meet a man named Isaiah who serves in the 5th USCT. He's taller than you, has a bayonet scar across his right forearm, and drinks his coffee blacker than sin. He tells you about his first time seeing combat, how the Confederates didn't aim at his feet or chest, but his face. They want us gone more than they want to win, he says with a shrug. You nod slowly. But you're still here, he smiles. Ain't that something? That night the two companies share stew, what little of it there is, and pass around a bottle of something probably not legal even in peacetime. Isaiah plays a harmonica. Ellis hums along. Myron carves a dice set out of pine. You write a letter to your sister and mention that your new friend can shoot tighter groupings than your old drill instructor. Nobody gets stabbed. Nobody throws punches. Progress, but not everyone's happy. One soldier from another unit, a guy named Felton, gets too loud near the fire, starts complaining about fighting next to darkies and how the war's not about them. His words drip like spoiled meat in the back of your throat. Ellis shuts him up with one sentence. They're here, you're here. If you got a problem, go fight for the other side. Silence, then laughter, from both companies. Felton walks away red-faced. No one stops him. No one invites him back. Here's the scholarly debate for tonight's firelight. Did the inclusion of black soldiers shift the moral weight of the war? Some historians say it turned a political battle into a righteous one. Others argue that racial tensions remained so thick that even unity on the battlefield couldn't erase them. But the truth might be somewhere in between. Because out here, when the bullets fly, you don't care who's standing beside you, as long as they're still standing. The next morning, you and Isaiah are both put on guard rotation. You walk the perimeter at sunrise, boots crunching frost-covered grass. The sky is pale, the air clean. He asks what you're going to do if you live through this. You tell him you might try to plant a garden, just beans and tomatoes, something that doesn't explode. He laughs. You better. I want to write you letters bragging about my okra. You smile. You don't say it, but you know he's thinking the same thing. Not both of you are making it out. That's just math. But in this moment, you let yourselves pretend. After guard duty, you march again, southbound, side by side, and though the world hasn't changed overnight, though prejudice still lingers in side glances and muttered words, something is different. Because now this army is bigger than just one kind of man, and whether the world likes it or not, you're learning that the fight ahead belongs to all of you. And maybe, just maybe, that means you have a chance to win it. Cold. That's the first thing you notice. You wake up in your tent, or what's left of it, with frost on your eyelashes and your breath curling in the air like smoke from a slow-burning fire. Every inch of your body aches, even your teeth. You stretch a leg and immediately regret it. Your joints creak like barn doors in January. Welcome to winter quarters. There's no battlefield today, no bayonets or boots trampling cornfields. Just you, your comrades, and the icy grip of late December somewhere deep in Virginia, miles from the front, miles from home. The guns are mostly quiet. There's a kind of unofficial ceasefire that takes root in winter, when even hatred has the decency to hibernate. Your company's been stationed here for weeks now. The fighting's paused, mostly because even the generals know it's impossible to charge uphill when your feet are frozen to the ground. So instead, the army builds cabins, real ones, logs, mud-daubed walls, crude chimneys cobbled together from salvaged bricks and the whispered memories of actual architecture. Yours is about the size of a chicken coop. It leaks when it rains, smokes when it doesn't, and smells like Ellis's socks. Which is to say, a crime against the nose. But it's home, sort of. The days now revolve around routine. You chop wood, patch coats, cook what you can find, and pray your toes don't turn black before spring. The officers push drills just to keep the blood moving and morale from sinking into the earth like a dead mule. Some men actually like this break. Not the cold, but the stillness. They find time to write full letters instead of scrawled scraps. Some read, some knit. Yes, knit. Private Hennigan makes the meanest pair of mittens this side of the Potomac. And others? Others just stare into the fire and don't say much at all. You get it. You've been drifting between the two extremes yourself. One day you're organising a snowball fight so intense that someone yells, "Fix bayonets!" as a joke. The next, you're staring at a charred piece of wood like it holds the secrets to life, and wondering whether your toes always felt this numb. Frostbite becomes the quiet killer now. It sneaks up on you like a Confederate picket, nipping at your fingers and ears until they go numb, then grey, then, well, you've seen enough men lose enough parts to know the signs. You wrap your fingers in rags and keep your boots close to the fire at night. You'd sleep with them on if they didn't smell like death. Here's your historical fact. During the winter of 1863 to 1864, the Union and Confederate armies hunkered down in camps that became entire cities. Encampments of thousands of men, complete with post offices, makeshift theatres, chapels and trading posts. They built streets, elected unofficial mayors, and even issued their own currency in some units. Winter wasn't just survival, it was civilization, under siege. You're not sure who came up with the idea, but one evening someone organises a fiddle contest. They call it the Battle of Bulltune, and it draws every bored soul within a 5-cabin radius. A black soldier from the USCT battalion, Isaiah's crew, wipes the floor with everyone. His fingers dance over those strings like they're made of lightning. Ellis tries to challenge him by banging spoons together. It's not close. Everyone cheers anyway. The next day, Myron teaches you how to carve a pipe from hickory. You're not good at it, but the distraction helps. The days are short now, and without something to do, your mind drifts into places it shouldn't. You think about home more than usual, not in an aching, homesick way, but like something behind glass. You remember the smell of summer dust, the sound of dogs barking down the road, the creak of your father's chair on the porch. Those memories feel warmer than the fire. But you know the truth. You're not going back as the same person. Here's your quirky fact. Many Civil War soldiers spent their downtime creating music, writing poetry, or even putting on plays. One Union camp hosted a Shakespeare performance starring 5 privates, a half-drunk chaplain, and a goat. The goat, by all accounts, was the best part of the show. You try to write a poem, it's bad, and you keep it anyway. One night, something weird happens. You're on picket duty, bundled in everything you own and still shivering. The woods are quiet, too quiet. Then, from the Confederate line, a voice, singing a Christmas hymn, low, uncertain at first, then stronger. Silent night. It drifts across the no man's land like smoke, soft and eerie. You don't understand all the words, his accent's thick, but the melody is unmistakable. You and Myron exchange a look, then he starts humming along, and then Ellis, of all people, starts singing, loud, off-key. But there it is. Within minutes you've got a handful of Union pickets singing back, not shouting, not mocking, just singing. The Confederate voice calls out, "Y'all sound terrible." Someone else replies, "Still better than your side, Johnny." Laughter. Actual laughter. For 5 full minutes you aren't soldiers. You're just men, half frozen, missing home, trading music in the dark. Then silence returns. But it's different now. Softer, like the earth itself exhaled. Here's your scholarly debate. Did winter quarters make men more human or more numb? Some historians say the forced pause let soldiers process the war, reconnect, even bond. Others argue that too much time between battles only let the fear fester deeper. You don't know where you land. You just know that doing nothing is its own kind of hell. One morning, Isaiah carves a chess set out of bone. You play 3 games. He wins all of them, even the one you cheat at. He tells you he used to be a preacher's son, that his father said war tests the soul more than the body. You nod. Mine said it ruins them both. That night, you dream of fires that don't go out, of boots that stay dry, of a road home. But in the dream, you're not walking alone. Spring's coming. You can smell it in the air. The mud will return, the marching, the cannon fire, the screaming. But for now, just for a moment, you wrap yourself tighter in your ragged blanket and let the cold just be cold, not danger. Tomorrow you'll fight again, but tonight, you rest. You wake up to birdsong, actual birdsong, not crows picking at corpses or gulls screaming over trash heaps, but honest-to-God songbirds, chirping, warbling, singing like they don't know what war is, or worse, like they do, and just don't care. You lie there for a moment, eyes closed, listening to the soft chorus overhead. Then your brain kicks in with one simple, urgent message. Run. Because birds mean spring, and spring means marching, and marching means fighting. You sit up and stretch, groaning like an old man. The snow is mostly gone now, replaced with a sea of wet mud. Your boots squish when you stand. Everything smells like mildew and last week's stew, but the sky is clear, and there's a freshness to the air you haven't felt since, well, maybe ever. Within hours, the camp is alive with motion. Officers bark orders, tents are packed, cabins dismantled, fires doused. You scrape the last bit of soot from your mess tin and toss it into your sack, already regretting what's coming next. Because this time, the march isn't just a shuffle to the next skirmish. This is Sherman's march. And you? You're in it. You've been assigned to join part of General William Tecumseh Sherman's force as it plunges deep into Confederate territory, starting in Tennessee, cutting through Georgia, all the way to the Atlantic if things go to plan. It doesn't feel like strategy. It feels like survival with extra steps. Sherman has a reputation, even among Union soldiers. Some call him brilliant, others call him mad. Most agree he's the kind of man who'd burn your house down before checking if you were still inside, and somehow you trust him more because of that. "This ain't war," Ellis mutters as you shoulder your rifle. "It's arson with paperwork." He's not wrong. Sherman's campaign is about more than winning battles. It's about breaking the South's spirit, destroying supply lines, burning crops, wrecking railroads, leaving nothing useful behind. And that means you, Private Mud Boots of the 18th Foot Sloggers, are now part soldier, part marching matchstick. The journey begins in mud. So much mud. Every step squelches. Every wagon gets stuck. Horses balk and bellow. You pass through small towns that have already been picked clean. Windows shattered. Fences ripped up for firewood. Chickens long since eaten or promoted to mascot status. You march 20 miles a day. Sometimes more. Sometimes less when the roads are washed out or you hit a swamp. Which happens often. Food becomes a game of chance. You eat what you can find. Salt pork, weevilled hardtack, the occasional apple stolen from an abandoned orchard. One night you fry up something Ellis swears is a squirrel. You don't ask. You just eat it with mustard and hope for the best. But here's where things turn dark. Because you start burning things. It starts small, barns filled with hay, mills that could be used to feed rebel troops. Then it escalates. Houses, farms, anything that could possibly be of use to the Confederacy gets the torch, and it's not always empty. You knock first, usually. One day your unit is ordered to clear a plantation. The family's already gone, fled days earlier, but the slaves stayed behind. Dozens of them. Not running, not hiding, just waiting. You remember a woman, grey hair, back straight, standing on the porch with a baby on her hip. She doesn't speak when the fire starts. She doesn't cry. She just watches the flames eat her world. And you don't know what to feel. Relief, guilt, justice, it all feels wrong. Even though they're the enemy. Even though you're following orders. Even though you know that every burned bridge means fewer Confederate supplies, fewer reinforcements, fewer bullets coming your way. But it still feels like too much. Here's your historical fact. Sherman's march to the sea covered over 250 miles, cutting a swath from Atlanta to Savannah in late 1864. His troops destroyed telegraph lines, looted supply depots, and burned anything that could aid the Confederacy. The goal was to end the war faster, and it arguably worked, but it left deep scars. And here's your oddball fringe detail. Union soldiers coined the phrase bummers to describe the foraging parties sent ahead to scavenge supplies. Some bummers were professional looters, others tried to follow strict rules. All of them developed creative methods for stealing chickens without getting pecked. You learn one of those methods from Myron, involving a sack, a harmonica, and a gentle lullaby that somehow hypnotizes poultry. You try it once. You are not successful. You get pecked. A lot. At one point you arrive in a town called Griswoldville. Small, dusty, empty. Except it's not. Confederate militia, mostly old men and boys, defend the town like it's the Alamo. The fight is short and brutal. You lose 5 men. They lose dozens. It's not a battle. It's a tragedy. Afterward your unit is silent. No cheering. No flag waving. Just stunned, exhausted silence. You see Isaiah bury a rebel soldier who can't be more than 15. He doesn't say a word. Just digs, gently folds the boy's coat and covers the grave with a branch so the wild dogs won't get it. Then he sits beside it for an hour, staring at the horizon. One night, as the march continues, you stumble into what's left of a plantation home. The roof's gone, the walls half collapsed. The parlour piano, somehow untouched, still sits in the corner. Isaiah sits down and starts playing something slow and mournful. You don't recognise the tune, but it feels like every road you've walked. You and the others sit on the floor, boots off, rifles leaned against scorched walls, and listen. The notes drift out through the broken windows into the night, and for a moment there's peace. Then you hear the boom of artillery in the distance. Savannah's near, you'll reach it soon. The end of the march, the Atlantic, maybe even a ship headed north. But you know the war isn't over. Not yet. Here's your scholarly debate to chew on while your boots dry by the fire. Was Sherman's march ethical? Some argue it saved lives by shortening the war. Others call it excessive, cruel, scorched earth madness. But most agree it broke the back of the Confederacy. You don't have the luxury of that debate right now. You just have the road, and the fire, and the cold, and the smell of ash on your skin. Because today you march, and tomorrow you burn. The first thing you smell is salt, not sweat salt, not blood salt, not the lingering stench of tears dried into your collar. Real salt, ocean salt. You blink against the sunlight as your company crests a hill and sees it. Savannah, glittering in the distance like a mirage that forgot to stay imaginary. There it is, the Atlantic, a wide, endless shimmer of silver and blue stretching far beyond anything your mud-soaked boots have touched before. And you made it. Somehow, through frostbite and mini balls, broken shoes and burned towns, squirrel stew and Isaac's harmonica, you marched from Atlanta to the sea. Ellis just stares, doesn't say anything. His beard's gone a little wild. He hasn't laughed in a week. But when he sees the ocean, he lets out a sound that's somewhere between a sigh and a laugh, like his lungs forgot how to choose. Myron mutters, "If this is heaven, it smells like dead fish." Isaiah grins, "Still better than the latrines." The men around you start to cheer, not loudly, not like the end of a battle, more like a relief valve got pulled open somewhere in the soul. It isn't joy, not yet, but it's close. It's the knowledge that you didn't die in a swamp ditch halfway through Georgia. That the ocean is here, and you are too. Savannah's already been taken. Sherman arrived days earlier, presenting the city as a Christmas gift to President Lincoln in December 1864. And now, you and your unit finally get to roll in behind him. Your boots crusted with the journey, your eyes sunken but sharp. The locals? Yeah, they stare. They come out in silence, watching as Union troops fill their streets. Some look scared, some defiant, most just exhausted. The war's bled them too, just in different colours. You pass crumbling mansions with shattered windows and gardens half dead from neglect. Shops with signs hanging crooked. A church with its steeple cracked, as if it sighed too hard and gave up. But there's no resistance, not anymore. Just a city resigned. You're bivouacked in the northern edge of town near a salt marsh that buzzes with mosquitoes too stubborn to notice winter. The camp smells like damp canvas and boiled rice. But for once, you're not moving. And that alone feels like paradise. Your first night in Savannah, someone breaks out a bottle of peach brandy that definitely didn't come through official channels. Myron claims he found it in a pigsty. Ellis swears it tastes like shoe polish. You drink anyway, because what else are you going to do? You're alive, and for now, that's reason enough. The next few days pass in a fog of rest and rebuilding. Your orders are light. Patrol the edge of the city, keep the peace. Don't light any more buildings on fire. You write a letter home, a long one. You describe the march, the fires, the cold nights, the fiddle contests, the boy at Gettysburg, the woman on the porch who watched her house burn and didn't blink. You don't sugarcoat it, because how could you? You also don't mention that you sometimes wake up gasping, that when someone drops a pan behind you, your body dives for cover on instinct, that some nights you see things in your dreams that don't go away when you open your eyes. You just say you're grateful to be here, that the sea is beautiful, that maybe you'll dip your feet in before you leave. One afternoon, you're assigned to a work detail near the riverfront, clearing debris, stacking cannonballs, watching Confederate prisoners haul lumber under guard. It's there, standing in the shade of an old warehouse, that you see something strange. A small group of children, black, barefoot, barely older than toddlers, chasing one another through the mud, laughing, playing, free. Their mother watches from a distance, seated on an overturned crate. She catches your eye, doesn't smile, doesn't look away either. You nod, she nods back. That's it. But it says more than words. Because you realise something then. You're standing in a new South, a broken one, a bleeding one, but new nonetheless. You've helped crack it open, and what comes next? That's the part no one knows. Here's your historical fact. When Sherman took Savannah, he found over 150 cannons, 13,000 bales of cotton, and a strategic port that essentially split the Confederacy in two. The city was spared the flames that consumed Atlanta, partly because it surrendered, partly because Sherman wanted it intact for supplies and logistics. And here's a little-known fringe detail. During the march to the sea, thousands of newly freed slaves followed the Union Army, forming refugee columns that stretched for miles. Some helped dig trenches, others cooked. Many just walked, hoping that wherever the army went, freedom would follow. Not all made it. Disease, hunger, and Confederate raids claimed many. But they walked anyway. You remember one old man, barefoot, grey-haired, pushing a wheelbarrow with everything he owned in it. You passed him just before Savannah. He looked at you, smiled, and said, "Almost there, boy." You wonder if he made it. You hope he did. The war isn't over, though. Word spreads through the camp Lee's still out there, holding Richmond, holding on. Grant is tightening the noose from the north, Sherman from the south. And you? You'll be moving soon, northward now, toward the final squeeze. But for now, you have a few days of stillness. You and Isaiah walk down to the beach one evening. The sun setting, orange and blood red, turning the sea into a sheet of molten glass. You both take off your boots, step into the surf. It's cold, sharp, salty, but it feels clean. Think we'll ever be done with this, you ask? Isaiah shrugs. Maybe. You gonna plant okra? He grins. You gonna plant beans? You both laugh. Because somehow standing in wet trousers on a war-torn shore, those feel like reasonable questions. Here's your scholarly debate to carry with you into the next march. Was the march to the sea justified by its results? Some say yes. It broke the South's infrastructure, morale and supply lines. Others say no, that it punished civilians, destroyed lives and set a dangerous precedent. But as you dry your feet and lace up your boots again, you don't think in those terms. You think in survival, in witnessing, in finishing the job, because you've come too far to stop now. And the war? It has one more page left for you. You leave Savannah in the grey hush of early morning, no fanfare, no bugle call, just the soft shuffle of boots over wet sand and the clink of gear as your company forms up and moves out. The tide's low, the sky still half asleep. You glance back at the ocean, just once, and then it's gone behind the trees and the fog. Ahead of you, Virginia, and the last gasp of the Confederacy. Word is Lee's forces are still hanging on up near Richmond, clinging to the capital like a tick on a dying dog. But Grant's got him boxed in, slowly tightening the lines around a town called Appomattox. You're ordered to rendezvous with Union forces north of the Carolinas. One final push, one final chance to wrap this thing up before the whole country unravels. No one says it out loud, but you feel it in the way the officers carry themselves, in the way everyone keeps checking their gear twice. This is the end game. Maybe. Hopefully. The march north is quieter than any you've done before. It's not slow, but it feels hushed, like the war is holding its breath. You pass through towns that no longer raise a flag for either side. Fields lie untended, barns burned to stumps. The people you see, if any, just watch from doorways, hollow-eyed and silent. You don't loot, you don't burn, not anymore, there's nothing left to take. By the time you reach the edge of Appomattox County, your company is down to half strength. Not from fighting, just fatigue, disease, the long grind of months on the march. You've patched your boots so many times they're more stitched than leather. Your rifle looks like it was dragged through a thunderstorm, which it was, twice. But you're still standing, still moving, and that's more than most can say. The camps at Appomattox are tense, soldiers clustered around fires that burn low and quiet. Rumours flit like moths from tent to tent. Lee's surrounded. He's asking for terms. Grant's refusing. No, Grant's already written the surrender. You don't know what's true. You just know that your heart has been thudding in your ears for 3 straight days. Then, one morning it happens. You're sitting near a fire trying to coax something edible out of boiled cornmeal and a strip of squirrel when a rider tears through camp shouting a single word. Surrender. At first no one moves. Then someone laughs, nervous, sceptical. Then another yells, "What kind of surrender?" "The surrender," the rider says, reins flapping. "Lee's surrendered. It's over." And just like that, the war snaps. Not with a bang, not with a charge, but with a collective, disbelieving exhale. Some men cheer, some cry, some just sit there, stunned, staring into the fire like they've forgotten how to live without war. You feel it too, that strange, hollow ache. Relief and grief twisted up like rope, because you're not jumping up and hugging anyone. You're not waving your hat in the air or dancing around the fire. You're just sitting still, because you made it. But not all of you did. Here's your historical fact. April 9th, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant at the McLean House in Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. The meeting was brief, quiet, and surprisingly respectful. Grant allowed Confederate soldiers to keep their horses. Parole slips were issued so they could go home. The war wasn't completely over, some skirmishes continued for a few weeks, but this was the moment everyone would remember. And here's your strange, almost poetic fringe detail. The same house where Lee surrendered had once belonged to Wilmer McLean, who just 4 years earlier had lived near Manassas, where the first major battle of the Civil War was fought in his front yard. "The war began in my backyard and ended in my parlour," he later said. You can't make that up. You and your company are ordered to witness the formal surrender of arms 2 days later. You line up on one side of the road. Confederate soldiers march in from the other. You expect to feel rage, maybe contempt. But mostly what you see are men just like you. Gaunt, hollow-eyed, boots worn to ribbons. Some have bandages where ears or fingers used to be. Most carry their rifles gently, like they're letting go of an old friend. One stops in front of your line, looks you in the eye, then places his musket on the pile. You nod, he nods back, and that's it. Later that night, your unit is called to attention. No speeches, just Captain Willis reading the final roll call. Some names get no response. You know why. You feel it like a phantom ache. When he calls your name, you answer, "Here." Simple, but it means everything. So here's your scholarly question to carry with you into whatever life waits beyond these fields. Can anyone really survive a war like this? Not just physically, but spiritually, morally. Can you go home and pick up a hoe after you've watched entire towns burn? Historians still argue about it. They analyse letters, pensions, suicide records. Some say most veterans adjusted, married, farmed, lived. Others say the war haunted them forever, turning dreams sour and silences loud. You're not sure yet which side of that debate you'll land on. All you know is this: you fought, you bled, you made it through, and tomorrow, you go home. But before that, just once more, you sit with Ellis and Myron and Isaiah under a sky bright with stars, and you listen to the crackle of the fire. You say nothing. No one does. Because tonight, for the first time in years, you can finally rest. So, you made it, against every odd. Through mud, blood, dysentery, frostbite, sleepless nights, empty bellies, and battlefields that chewed up armies like firewood, you're still breathing. Well, barely. You survived the Civil War, and not as a general, not as a name etched in a marble memorial, but as a soldier. A foot-slogging, lice-scratching, pork-boiling, trigger-pulling, joke-cracking, letter-writing, soul-weary soldier. The kind who made up the backbone of this war, the kind history too often forgets. You endured disease and boredom, terror and homesickness, stupidity from above and suffering all around. You fought not for glory, but because someone had to hold the line, and when the line moved, you followed. Sometimes forward, sometimes back, sometimes into a cornfield you'd never walk out of the same again. You laughed with your comrades, you buried some, you froze, you marched, you cooked things that probably weren't legal to cook. You met presidents, shook hands with the enemy, and maybe even fell in love with the idea of home again. And now, you're going back, but not unchanged, because that's the real answer to the question. Could you survive as a Civil War soldier? Maybe, but you'd never be the same again. War carves things into you, not just scars, but shapes. Your humour darkens, your patience thins. You stare longer at the horizon than at the people talking to you. You get quieter, because you've already said everything that matters to the people who never made it out. And yet, despite it all, when the peace comes, you welcome it. You go home, you touch the front door, you walk through, you see your mother's garden, your father's boots, your little sister's scribbled letters tucked into your old coat pocket. You unpack, and maybe, after a long while, you sleep. Not as a soldier anymore, just as you. So hey, if you've stuck with me through this whole thing, first of all, you're a champ. Second, I hope this helped you feel closer to the past, and closer to the people who lived through it. Real people, not statues or names in textbooks, but ordinary folks trying to survive the worst thing imaginable. As always, if you enjoyed tonight's journey, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want more of this kind of slow burn, late-night historical chaos. And drop a comment with your city and the time you listen to this. I love seeing how far this reaches. Now dim those lights, let the fan hum, pull that blanket up. You earned a good sleep tonight.